alta es la luna cuando empieza a esclarecer. Ella hermosa y sin ventura nunca llegué a nacer. Ella hermosa y sin ventura nunca llegué a nacer. Mis ojos me se hincharon de tanto mirar la mar. Vapóricos van y vienen, letra para mí no hay. Vapóricos van y vienen, letra para mí no hay. Dos taras tiene con él, la una que arrollada dos, la otra que echa sheshbesh. La una que arrollada dos, la otra que echa sheshbesh. Mi querido es alto y vano y una vara de expander. Mi madre hizo colada, lo metió a detener. Mi madre hizo colada, lo metió a detener. Na, 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 na,
Let's try this again. Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Hakham Melech of the World Alliance of Qara'im, and we are in Parashat Yitro. And this morning we were speaking about our main Makirimak, Yitro himself, and we found out that he's such a Makirimak that he has a number of different names, or so it would seem. Well, I don't want to sit here and belabor this point, okay? There's a lot more to look at in the Torah. Let me just share the screen again differently. So I don't want to belabor the point on Yitro. Suffice to say that it's not so clear. Okay, so he's called Reuel. He's in Exodus 2:18. He's called Hobab in Judges 4:11. He's called Hobab men Reuel in Numbers 10:29, or is Hobab the son of Reuel, is therefore the brother-in-law. And like I said, there's so much more. I don't want to get bogged down now, but I would say that a basic working assumption, a good working assumption, might be that his name is actually Hobab. Okay, that Jethro, or his other name is Hobab. We didn't even explore what uses the name Jethro, same as Yitro. At any rate, I would say maybe his other name is Hobab, okay? and his father is Reuel. And I think the clearest idea for that here is in Numbers 10:29 when it's called Hobab ben Reuel. So Hobab and Reuel are clearly not the same person, right? Unless I'm totally missing something, which I don't think I am. And Reuel, when it's mentioned in Exodus 2:18, when the daughters of Reuel, after Moshe basically waters their flock for them and chases away the mean, evil, nasty Midianite shepherds, that where it says they went to their father Reuel, that maybe it's speaking about their grandfather, because we know we've seen many times that father, when it says Av, it could mean a grandfather, or even beyond that, it can mean an ancestor. And when it says Ben, it can often mean not a child, but a grandchild. So maybe it would seem the most logical working hypothesis would be that Reuel is the grandfather, Hobab is the father of Tzipporah, and therefore Moshe's father-in-law, and that his other name is Yitro or Jethro. Okay, and that's the story, boys and girls. Okay, so but like I said, we're not going to linger on that right now. We're not going to linger on that right now because there's so much more to look at. We were also looking in the book of Judges and reading the story of Barak and Devorah, which I love very much. And one of the things I want to try to do in these studies is basically make an excuse to go off on a tangent, to make an excuse to get into the Tanakh. I was thinking maybe I would actually start explicitly reading a certain part of the Tanakh each one of these Shabbat studies, but then I decided it's just we're already packed and we already don't finish all the things that I'd like to talk about in a total of, I mean, these studies, the morning study is usually about 2 hours, the afternoon study is usually about 3 hours, and I don't even get through the portion of the Torah that to the degree that I'd like to. So I don't think we're going to do that, but maybe what I'll do is when I have time, right now I'm working on my master's thesis. For those who know me, you know about that. And so when I have a little bit of time, maybe I'll add another class once a week, which would be a Tanakh class or something like that. Okay, we'll see. At any rate, I do love this story, and I'm almost tempted to finish it. And should I do it? Let's see. The reason we went to it is because of Judges chapter 4, verse 12. No, not 12. Judges chapter 4, verse 11, where it says, Hever HaKeni nifrad mikayin mivnei chovav hoten Moshe. So Hever, who's some guy, he's a Kenite, separated himself from, or who was, I guess, the descendant of Cain, because the Keni, I assume, are the descendants of Cain, that's Cain and Abel, of Cain and Abel fame, right? Or maybe not. Yeah, I suppose so. At any rate, Mivnei Chovav, from the children of Chovav, Hoten Moshe. So here, Chovav is called the Hoten of Moshe, okay? And that's the way we spoke about it. And they basically came in battle array against the Israelites in the time of Devorah and Barak. So should we finish off just to get our portion of the Torah? Maybe so. Let's see. Of the Tanakh, of the Nach. Let's do it. Okay, verse 12. Wa'agidu Sisera. So Sisera is the head of the army. He's the defense, secretary of defense for some idiot named what's his name? Yavin. Melech Canaan. He's a king in Canaan. Right? There are many kings in Canaan, but he's one of the kings in Canaan, and he's got his chief of the army, Sisera. And Sisera is not going to be a happy camper very soon. And the word camper is definitely a pun, a play on words. Anyone who knows the story knows how that's a play on words. And if you don't, you'll find out in a minute. Okay. So Yagidu, this is Judges chapter 4, verse 12. Yagidu le Sisera. And they said, it was said, this is sometimes the way the Torah uses, just like we say, they said to Sisera, the Torah uses exactly the same thing. This is the future third person plural, or the imperfect third person plural with a vav at the beginning, the vav hipuch, the conversive vav, which changes it to a past tense. So literally they said to Sisera, but it was said, right? This is the way that the Torah, just like we do in modern English, we said, oh, they said to him, or they say it's going to be sunny today, right? So that's to express the passive mood. Okay. So it really means it is said, or it has been said, right? Same thing here. So it was said, or somebody said to Sisera, messenger. Maybe you can even understand. Okay, messengers. Somebody said to Sisera, Ki ala Barak ben Avinoam har Tabor, that this Barak ben Avinoam went up to the mountain of Mount Tabor. Mount Tabor is in the north of Israel. I've passed by it many, many times, assuming it's the same place. It's very beautiful. It's near Afula, if I'm not mistaken, kind of in the, I won't say the way north of Israel, but not far from, let's see, Afula is near Beit Sha'an, I believe. So in the kind of the north of Israel, you would say, yeah, you definitely call it the north of Israel. Okay, it's a very beautiful mountain. At any rate, it's kind of like slopes up very nice. It's very clear, assuming this is the same biblical mountain as Har Tabor. At any rate, so here comes Barak ben Avinoam. Barak only agreed to go out to battle with his 10,000 Zebulunite and was it Gadite? I can't remember now. Naphtaliite and Zvulunite troops. If Dvorah would go with him, and Dvorah said, "Okay, you want it that way, tough guy," then what's going to happen is that you're not going to get the honor for the kill. There's going to be a woman who gets the honor for the kill. And the impression is at that point, when Dvorah, who is a prophet, it says explicitly that she's a prophet, Dvorah Isha Nevi'ah, it says in Judges 4:4, chapter 4, verse 4. Okay, so the implication at that point is Dvorah is going to be the one who is going to take care of Sisera, but that is not to be the case, as we shall soon see. Okay, in this famous story, many people know the story. Okay, oh, I'm sorry, we're already there. So Sisera called out all of his chariots, 900 chariots, barzel of iron, wa'et, kol ha'am asher ito, and all the people with him, me haroshet agoyim el nachal kishon, from the what's charoshet? Charoshet is the little pasty substance that we have on at the Passover Seder. It's charoshet, right? So it means a pasty substance of the goyim. No, I'm joking. It's just a place name. Okay. Harash, the root there, harash, means to plow. Okay. So haroshet goyim, or when it says charoset, I'm not sure where the word charoset comes from. It may even be mentioned. I'm not sure. Anyway, doesn't matter. So Harosh the Goyim is just a place name. El Nachal Kishon, to the Kishon spring. Nahal is basically a wadi. Watomer Dvorah el Barak kum ki zeh hayom asher natan Yehovah et Sisera biyadecha. Get up, arise, because today is the day that in which Yehovah has given Sisera into your hands. Okay, so Dvorah is the Nevi'ah, she's prophesying. Halo Yehovah yatsa lefanecha. Has not Yehovah, or don't you see that Yehovah has gone out before you? Or, take a look, Yehovah has gone out before you. V'yared Barak maher mehar Tabor, and Barak went down from Har Tabor, from Tabor mountain. Aseret alafim ish acharav, and 10,000 men after him. V'yaham Yehovah et Sisera, and Yehovah confused. This word we saw, I think, in last week's Parsha, Yaham. I'm trying to remember. I think it was associated with one of the plagues, if I'm not mistaken. So the translator here is routed, but it really means to confuse or startle, or yeah. So and I can't remember what it is, but I'm not going to look now because we've already gone on too many tangents. Sisera et kol harechav et kol hamachaneh. So Yehovah confounded, I think would be a good translation, Sisera and all of the chariots, well, kol hamachaneh, and all of the camp, the army camp, lefi charev, by the sword. Okay, Lifnei Barak Yared Sisera mi'al hamerkava yanas beraglav. So basically, Barak goes there and kicks, you know what, and Sisera runs away. Yanas beraglav. He gets off his chariot. Remember, he's there with his 900 chariots, his best chariots. And now this little weasel, this little wimp, is crying, is crying like a little baby. Well, he will be soon, and well, his mommy will be. And so he gets off his chariot and runs away like little coward he is. All cower and fear before the great God of Israel, Yehovah. Okay, so what the heck is this? I don't know why I get these things. This has got to go. Goodbye. Okay, so where were we? Okay, verse 16. Barak radaf achrei harechev. So Barak runs after, or he's chased after the chariots. This is singular here, but it's the kind of abstract plural. The chariots achrei machane, and after the camp, meaning the soldiers in the camp who are, I guess, are now all running away. Ad haroshet hagoyim, until the same place, the Passover group of the nations. Vayipol kol hamachane Sisra lefi cherev lo nishar ad echad, and he kills the entire army of Sisra, the entire camp of Sisra, by the sword. Not even one remained, except for, of course, Sisra, who ran away like a little. It's a nice word that starts with a B and ends with something you do when you scratch yourself, or the thing that you're scratching. All right. Sisera nas beraglav. Sisera ran away by foot. El ohel Yael, into the tent of Yael. Eshet Hever Hakeni, the wife of Hever Hakeni. So we saw this name Hever. Where did we see this? Yes, we saw it. Yeah, Hever Hakeni nifrad mikayin ibne Chovav hoten Moshe. Okay, so now, so this is why Hever Hakeni is mentioned. So Hever Hakeni is not coming to war against Israel. It would seem he's mentioned here as this Kenite from the children of Chovav the Choten Moshe. So he's a descendant of Jethro. Okay, so I guess he's a friend to the Israelites, and that's exactly why it's mentioned that he ohelo ad elon nanim asher et kadesh. So he pitches his tent at this place. Okay. Where were we? Yeah. So he runs. So Sisera runs into the tent of Yael, the Eshet Hever Hakeni. So he runs into the tent of Yael, who is Hever's wife. Kishalom ben Yavin melech Hatzor ben Bet Hever Hakeni, because there was peace between Yavin, the king of Hatzor. So now we find out that he is the king of Hatzor. Actually, did mention Hatzor there earlier. Yavin melech Kinaan asher manach b'Hatzor. So he was the king of Canaan who reigned in Hatzor. And I told the story this morning about how a friend and I one day in Israel decided to visit Hatzor, which is a very important Iron Age archaeological site. And I guess we left a little bit late, and then we got stuck in traffic. And then we ate lunch. To make a long story short, this place, which is, if I remember correctly, kind of northwest of Haifa. No, northeast of Haifa. You can't go northwest of Haifa. It's on the west coast of Israel. At any rate, northeast of Haifa. And when we got there, it was closing, or it had just closed. So we took about a 5-hour journey up to Hatzor, and never got to see it. Oh well, maybe one of these days. At any rate, again, the Sisra. I'm sorry. Where were we? Where were we? Oh, we're down here already. Okay. Tomer Elav Surah Adoni. Okay, wait a second. So here, Melech Hatzor ben Beit Hever Hakeni. So there was peace between Hever. Hever is the husband of Yael, and the king of the king Yavin of Hatzor, right? So this is why Sisera decides he can run into Yael's tent. Okay, but I assume, and I'm just speculating here, that the reason it's mentioned that Hever was a descendant of Hovav is that also Hever then would have had some kind of affinity or some kind of loyalty to the Israelites. Remember, this is already hundreds of years later after Jethro lived and visited Moshe, or was the father-in-law of Moshe. But I'm assuming that the reason it's mentioned and the reason that Yael does what she does is because there was still kind of some kind of affinity that the descendants of Hovav would have towards Israel, which would explain Yael's actions. Okay, v'titzei Yael likrat Sisra, and Yael came out towards Sisra. V'tomer elav, Sura Adoni, Sura, and she said to him, Sura Adoni, Sura Elai, come into me, or literally Sur means to deviate, okay, or to how do I translate it? I always forget the official translation. Turn aside. There we go. Okay, come in, or basically come into my tent is what she's saying. Al tira, do not be afraid. Weisar eleha hela, and so he came into her tent. He turned aside into her tent. Witichasehu b'smicha, and he covered her with a blanket. Okay, so this is a word that's used in modern Hebrew. Smicha is still a blanket today. The underlying root for this word would be I don't know. Let's take a look. I was about to say samach, but that's with a samech. So what is the underlying word? So it's only used once. Oh, that's interesting. Only used once. It is a hapax legomenon. That's the nice fancy word if you want to sound like you know what you're talking about. So okay, it appears only once in the Torah. Smicha. A rug, a mantle, who the heck knows what it is. Once you have these, then it's very hard to know exactly what they are, except from context, or perhaps you can look at other related languages. So here they're related to Arabic. So that this would be a samala, I'm sorry, samaka. That's a qaf. Okay, so samaka, obviously smicha, samaka, which is an envelope or a cloak. Okay. I'm sorry, enclose or envelop is samaka, and this would be some. This is samka, is a cloak. Okay, so we get the idea. All the best they can do is related to Arabic. It's translated as a here rug, mantle. In modern Hebrew, a smicha is a blanket. That's how you say blanket in modern Hebrew. Okay. So she covers him up with a smicha, right? She's really mommying him. She's babying him. You know, she's really getting him off guard for what's about to happen. Verse 19, Eleha, and he said to her, Ashkini na mi'at mayim. Please give me a little bit of water. Water me a little bit of water. Literally, ashkot. It's the same verse. It's the same word that is used in Genesis 1. Where it says, I think it says that it was before the plants were created, because God had yet to water the earth, right? So we're going to find that in Genesis 1, if I'm not mistaken. Genesis 2, okay? Let's look at that for a second. Okay, and steam went up from the land, the earth, and watered all of the face of the earth. So I guess it wasn't with the plants. I'm trying to remember now exactly what it was, but I'm not going to go back there right now. Okay, and that's talking about the rivers that water the garden, etc., etc. Okay, so it means basically to feed liquid to or feed water to. Okay, so give me a bit of water, because I'm thirsty. I'm very thirsty. What? Talking about that. Watiftach et ne'od hechalav, and he opened up I don't know what this word ne'od is. Let's check it out. Jug. Not familiar with that word. See, every time I teach, I learn. Thank you. Balim lechamorehem ne'odot yayin. So okay, containers. Watiftach et ne'od hechalav. That's our verse. Hamor lechem with od yayin. Okay, so it's a skin, a bottle, a skin of uncertain derivation, unknown. Assyrian nadu, Aramaic noda, etc., etc. Psalm 56:9, figurative scene, bikitor neod, shriveled and useless. Okay. There, we learned a new word. I learned a new word. I mean, I've seen it around, but it did not stick in my mind. Okay, so basically a skin, a wine skin, or a milk skin in this case, of milk, So she feeds him milk. So she gives him, she's the only thing she's not doing here is burping the guy, for God's sakes. I mean, what the heck more is she going to do here? She's inviting him into her tent. She's putting a blanket on top of him. She's giving him milk. What's she going to do? Tell him a bedtime story next? Okay, well, not exactly. Okay, so she gives him milk and covers him with a blanket. Verse 20. And he said to her, stand by the opening of the tent. So if anyone comes by, stand at the opening of the tent. If anybody should ask you if there's a man inside, say there's not. So Sisera is scared out of his his pajamas, and he tells Yael to tell everyone that he's not here, because obviously they're on the lookout for him, right? Ha'ohel tasem et hamakebet biada. So Yael took the wife of Chaver, and again here she's mentioned as the wife of Chaver. Okay, so a lot of times when they want to emphasize a person or emphasize something she's doing, they'll give a full name. So they don't just call Yael here; they call Yael Eshet Chaver. So she took the tent peg. Ayated is a tent peg. Ha'ohel, from the tent, with tasem et makebet, and she took a hammer in her hand, and this is where this word is why they think sometimes they'll call Judah HaMaccabee, or the Maccabees, Judah the hammer, and this is because makebet. I don't know where else it appears. So it appears only one other place. So okay. So in this context, I'd have to look at Isaiah 51:1, but here it's used as a hammer, and this is why they think one of the explanations for Yehuda Maccabee, although it's certainly not confirmed, there are other explanations as well, is that it means Judah the hammer. That's why I had, what was that movie that so many people liked and I couldn't stand, The Hebrew Hammer, or something like that, right? That comes from Judah HaMaccabee. Okay, which comes from this because makebet is the word here for hammer. So she took the hammer in her hand. So she's got a tent peg in one hand, and she's got a hammer in another hand, and it ain't looking too good for Cicero, who's lying under the blanket in his PJs, sipping warm milk, right, and resting up. Okay, tavo elav bila'at, and she came to him quietly or secretly. So we saw this word. No, we did not see this word. That was in Latehem, La'at. So I don't think this is the same thing. Latehem, Lahatehem. I don't think it's related. Let me just look for 1 second. I was going to make a point, but I don't think that point is going to work. I don't know why they don't even mention where is Judge 41. Yeah, they do relate it to this. Belatehem. Ya'suken hattumei Mitzrayim belatehem. So we saw this. Okay, let me just take a look at this for 1 second here. Lot. So they are relating the word la'at to the root lot, which is it's usually translated as secret arts when it speaks about the Egyptian magicians. For instance, right here, imitating the feats of Moshe. Then it says be'latehem. Yasukin chatubei Mitzrayim be'latehem. Their enchantments, or sometimes it's translated as secret arts. And so at least the BDB is saying that that's the same root, la'at, with the aleph, and lat. The aleph is one of those letters that can fall in and out, not as frequently as, let's say, the hey, the nun, or the yud, or the vav, but it can. And so it's that same root here. Okay, they're secret arts. So basically, la'at means secretly or softly. Okay, in modern Hebrew, it means 1 second. Is that with an ayin or with an aleph? I can't remember now. La'at. No, it's with an aleph. Okay, la'at means slowly. Okay, so if you said, common phrases, la'at, la'at, okay, slowly. Okay, but it means really secretly or softly or quietly, right? Secretly is basically what it means. It means in secret. And I'm also trying to think. Let's see here. Is it in? Let's see. 1 second here. I can't remember now. Okay, forget it. I was going to mention it also in one other place, but I can't remember right now. I'll have to check it on my own. Okay. So she came to him secretly, quietly, and she she blasted or stuck. If you want to use the modern Hebrew translation, but this is exactly the same root as litkoa, like when you blast on a trumpet. So she like blasted or shoved, I guess you could say, or drove. There you go, perfect. Okay, et yated, the 10th peg berakato, into his temple. Raka. Judges. So the only place, okay, and then it's in Song of Songs. Okay, so his temple. Wa titznach ba'aretz. So she drove the 10th peg into his temple. What titznach? Litznoach is, well, let's put it this way in modern Hebrew, a matzneach is a parachute. Sanhanim are paratroopers. So what titznach means like to fall down, basically, right? With titznach ba'aretz. What titznach? What titka et hayated berakato with titznach. So it went down into the ground. So I guess it's speaking about the yated here. The only problem is that this is feminine. Yated is masculine. Let's take a look. Oh, it is feminine. Okay. Interesting. So then that works. I did not know it was a feminine word. I will remember that from now on because I will remember it as associated with tznach, because it's an important word. Know that. So so the 10th peg went into the ground. Okay. Okay. So basically she took the 10th peg and shoved it through his temple until it came out the other side, and she basically nailed him. She really nailed this guy. She nailed this guy straight into the ground, literally. Okay, ba'aretz, into the ground. V'hu nirdam uyaf uyamat. So he basically went under. I guess they say okay. Well, unirdam, he was fast asleep. Or maybe it means he fell asleep, right? In other words, went unconscious, we off, and like wasted away and died. Or maybe it means he was asleep, and at that point he wasted away and died. At any rate, Sisera is gone. And just as Devorah had predicted, had prophesied to Barak, this was done at the hands of a woman. Where did we see that? Right? Barak is a scaredy cat. He doesn't want to go along. He wants Devorah, the prophetess, to go with him, and she says, "Okay, you want to bring a woman along? Then you're not going to get the glory. You don't want to be a real man. You want to bring me along, your mommy to come along with you. No problem. Then it's not going to be you who gets the glory. It's going to be a woman who gets the glory, right? And we saw that here, verse 8. Wayomer eleha Barak Eleha Barak. Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is here where Barak requests to go along, and then Dvorah says in verse 9, "V'tomer haloch elech imach efes ki lo tiyeh tefartecha al haderech asher ata olech ki biyad isha yimkor Yehovah it Sisra." Okay, so she says at this point, she says, "Okay, you want to go? No problem, but it's a woman who's going to take care of Sisra." And here, a woman named Yael, who is not even an Israelite, right? She's a descendant of Hovav. She's the descendant of Jethro, the father-in-law of Moshe, and she takes care of him and how. That's an understatement, right? She really drives her point home. Okay, so where were we? So he dies. So that's the end of Sisera. Wahine Barak rodef et Sisera, and so Barak at this point is chasing after Sisera. V'titzei Yael lekrato, and out comes Yael v'tomer lo lech v'erecha v'arecha et ha'ish asher ata mivakesh. She says, "Come or go, and I will show you the person, the man that you are looking for." Yavo eleha wahine Sisera nofel met v'yated be'rakato, and there was Sisera dead, who had fallen dead, and the tent peg in his temple. Wa yachnea Elohim b'yom hahu et Yavin melech Canaan, and God subdued on that day Yavin, the king of Canaan, lifnei bnei Israel, before the children of Israel. Telech yad bnei Israel haloch v'kasha al Yavin melech Canaan. And after that time, to paraphrase, the upper hand went to Israel, or they continued pressing against Yavin, the king of Canaan, ad asher ichritu et Yavin melech Canaan, until they cut off, which I assume means killed in this case, but it could mean just destroyed his kingdom or took him down from his. I would assume this just means killed, destroyed. Et Yavin melech Canaan. Okay, so that's it. That's the end of Yavin melech Canaan. That's the end of Sisera. We have this wonderful poem, the poem of Devorah, and I would go through it, but I'm not going to go through it because it'll just take too long, and I want to get back to our Torah study here. Okay, so at this point, any questions or any comments from anybody? No? Yes? Okay, then we shall go on. Okay. So we're going to go back to, no. So we're going to go back to Exodus 18. Right. So, yeah. So we were checking out Yitro. So Yitro is mentioned by his name here. We said he's the Kohen of Midian. We don't know to what god. I guess we can go research it, but I don't want to. I want to move ahead a little bit. Okay. So here comes Yitro. Okay. Maybe I should add this here. So here he's called the Kohen of Midian. We know that Reuel in Exodus 7, I believe it was, is called the Kohen of Midian. So is Yitro the same as Reuel? Is Reuel the same as Chovav? Is Reuel the father of Chovav? Who's Yitro? Is Yitro Chovav? Is Yitro Reuel? It's really hard to know. But just because it calls him here Kohen of Midian, and in Exodus, I believe it's 7, it calls also, maybe it's Exodus 2, it calls all, I think it's Exodus 2, I'm sorry. It calls also Reuel, the king of the Kohen of Midian, does not mean that it's the same person, right? The priesthood could have been held by both father and son. They could have both been the Kohen of Midian. At any rate, here we go. Jethro, Kohen Midian, Choten Moshe, the father-in-law of Moses, et kol asher asa Elohim leMoshe, u'Yisrael amo ki hotzi Yehovah et Yisrael mi Mitzrayim. So Jethro hears about this, the Exodus. Excuse me for 1 second. Okay, so sorry about that. So Jethro hears about the exodus from Egypt, or the plagues and the exodus, the whole kit and caboodle, the whole shebang, and so the so here's about this. Why Yikach Yitro choten Moshe et Zipora eshet Moshe acharei shiluchecha, and so Yitro, the father-in-law of Moshe, takes Zipora, the wife of Moshe, after she had been sent away. And I've heard some people say that this means that Moshe divorced Zipporah. I think that's an absolutely ridiculous statement. I don't think that although lishaleach may mean to divorce, it really just means to send away. And by extension, it means to divorce. In the Torah, we have this idea of Shalom Ariella and Ben. In the Torah, we have this idea of there's a word which is a base word, I would call it, or a basic meaning of a word, which could be a very literal meaning, and then we have kind of layers of extensions, layers of meanings of extensions. So the basic word of shalach or lishaleach is to send away. Okay, shalach is to send. Lishaleach, in this case, it's the PL form. So sometimes the PL form has the purpose or has the effect of making a word more intensive, right? So it means to send away, right? Not just to send, but to send away, to force away in a certain sense, or to send away, right? It's a little bit more intensive than just shalach, but its basic meaning is not to divorce. Okay, its basic meaning is to send away. And I've heard a number of people, including a particular Karaite who thinks he's a little bit smarter than he is, say that this means that Tzipora was divorced by Moshe, and then now he's remarrying her, and that just doesn't make any context. That doesn't make any sense from the context here at all. I guess you could weave a story and say that Tzipora was mad about the whole thing in the when Moshe stopped at the inn on the way back to Egypt, and she circumcises her son and throws a foreskin at Moshe and calls him a chatan damim, a bridegroom of blood, and all this kind of stuff. And so then she ran away, or Moshe asked for a divorce, and you could weave all kinds of stories, but that just doesn't make sense. What would make a lot more sense is that, okay, so Tzipora is we know. Well, let's see. So Tzipora goes to Egypt with Moshe, right? Because that's where the incident with the inn occurs. Let's look this up for a second. So this is the only time. This is only the third time she's mentioned, actually. So then Tzipora has that whole incident in the inn. That's in Exodus 4. And now she's mentioned again. Okay. And it's the only 3 times she's mentioned. So my guess is that what happened here is that Moshe just said, listen, things are going to get real now. We got this whole plague thing going on. I got to free my people. I got to take care of business here. So you go back to your dad's house and just wait there with him, and eventually I'll come call for you. Okay? I think that's a much better explanation than this idea of that Moshe divorced her and is now taking her back, is now remarrying her. It doesn't make any sense contextually at all. Let's see what Mr. Robert Alter has to say about this one. Again, not that he's the be-all and end-all, but I do like his take on things. He's really good. So this is Exodus chapter 18, verse 2. Well, let's check Everett Fox first. So Exodus 18:2. Oops, do I have the sharing set up correctly? Yes, I do. Exodus 18:2. It's too far. This is 28. Exodus 18:2. Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, took Zipporah, Moshe's wife, after she had been sent home. So clearly, that does not imply divorce. That implies exactly what we're saying right now, that you've been sent home, right? Like, you chill back at your father's house, and I'll come get you when things calm down a bit, right? Robert Alter says, so this is Exodus 18. 18, verse 2. Over here. So this is 18, verse 2. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took Zipporah's wife after her being sent away. So he just basically translates it quite literally. And her 2 sons. Let's see if there's any commentary about that. After being sent away, what this phrase refers to is uncertain, as we saw it repeatedly in the Exodus narrative. Send has multiple meanings. The verbal noun here, shiluchim, sometimes means divorce, but that is an unlikely scenario from Moses and Zipporah. The rare use of the term as marriage gift makes even less sense in this context. Marriage gift would be like the ketubah, like the divorce settlement. The most reasonable inference is that Moses, though he had started out for Egypt with his wife and sons, at some point thought better of it and sent her and the boys home to stay in safety with her father, obviously. The Midrash Haggadah, 17th century, vividly dramatizes such a reading. When Aaron first comes out to the wilderness to meet Moses, he sees his brother's wife and sons and says, "Why? Where are you taking them?" He said to him, to Egypt, he said to him, "For the previous ones we are sorrow-stricken, and now you're still bringing us others?" Immediately Moses said to return to your father's house. Obviously, this is much more, this is the most reasonable explanation. Let's see what Mr. Rashi says. I remember whenever a long time ago, when I would type the word Rashi into Microsoft Word, it would always spell check it to rash. So sometimes I call him rash, because it's like a rash on the body of... yeah, that's my take on Zipporah being sent back, for sure. It doesn't make sense. There's no implication here that Moses is getting divorced or is having any problems with Zipporah. Aside from that, she's only mentioned 3 times, for God's sakes, right? So, okay. At any rate, let's see what Rash says. Again, this is Exodus 18:2. I sometimes just look up the Rashi just for giggles. Sometimes he does make decent points, although he always makes them with some kind of weird kind of explanation. But there's somewhere in there a decent point sometimes. But let's just see what he has to say. 18:2. אחר שילוחיה, כשאמר לו הקדוש ברוך הוא במדיין, לך שוב מצרים, ויקח משה את אשתו ואת בניו וחומר, ויצא אהרון לקראתו ויפגשהו בהר האלוהים, ואמר לו מהם. Okay, so this is basically just retelling the same story that Robert Alters mentioned. אמר לו זו היא אשתי שנשאתי במדיין, ואלו בניי, אמר לו היכן. Okay, it's exactly repeated the same story. Okay, okay. So that's that. Okay, so Rashi's basically repeating the story here from the that Robert Alters mentioned, right? That's being quoted here as from the Midrash Haggadah. So Rashi is clearly quoting the Midrash Haggadah. Okay, that's that. So here comes not the mother-in-law, but here comes the father-in-law. Okay, as I mentioned this morning, people aren't always happy when the in-laws come, but here come the in-laws, and you don't know how long they're going to stay. Should I get the bedroom ready? You're going to stay in a hotel? Do I have to buy special food? Okay, well, all right. Here come the in-laws. Here comes Yitro, and here we go. So, but this happens to be a better visit than let's say in the honeymooners than when Alice's mom visits Ralph and Alice, as I mentioned this morning. I won't repeat my same stupid jokes from this morning. All right, so verse 3. ואת שני בניה אשר שמה אחד שם שמה אחד גרשום, כי אמר גר הייתי בארץ נוכריה, ושמה אחד אליעזר, כי אלוהי אביו עזרי ויצילני מחרב פרעה. Okay, so a couple of things to say here. This is the first time we're hearing about Eliezer. Eliezer is never mentioned before, right? Let me just check that. Well, we've got Eliezer from who was Abraham's the head of his house, right? Rosh or Meshek Beito. I forgot the exact phraseology, but basically the head of his household, his servant, his loyal servant. And now we have this Eliezer. So it's clearly two different Eliezers, Mirav, Yoash, Eliezer. There are other Eliezers, but this is the first time, and actually, as far as I can see in the entire Torah, the last time that Eliezer, the son of Moshe, is ever mentioned. Right? There's no other place. Ezra, that's it. Well, in Chronicles, but that's just a replay. But in the Torah, that's the only other time that Eliezer is ever mentioned. Okay, Gershom is mentioned way back in the beginning of Exodus, so that would be probably around. Let's see, Exodus. I'm going to guess Exodus 2. No, that's too far. Let's try Exodus 4. Moses of Egypt. Why am I struggling here? Let me just look it up. The concordance. So Gershom is mentioned in Exodus 2:22. Let's take a look at that. So, right. So this is right after, basically right after Tzipporah, 2:22. So he marries Tzipporah. Oops. So it seemed good in his eyes. So he basically stays with Reuel or Chovav or Jethro, whoever they are. And V'teled ben v'yikrat Shemot Gershom. So he gave birth to a son. Actually, she gave birth to a son. That's Tzipporah that's being spoken about. V'yikra, and he called his name, and Moshe called his name Gershom. Ki amar ger haiti be'eretz nochriya. Okay, because he said, I'm a stranger in a foreign land. I'm a stranger in a strange land. Okay. Well, we could sit here and we can spend an hour on this statement right here. I will just refer back to Genesis chapter 15, the Brit Ben Abitarim. Okay, where one of the prophecies, where was it? Okay, okay. ויאמר לאברהם, and Avram said, ידוע תדע כי גר יהיה זרעך בארץ לא להם. That your descendants, your seed shall be a ger, shall be a stranger, but talking about Egypt. Okay? But here Moshe is basically taking that same theme, and I don't think it's by coincidence. You know, he must have known about this oath, especially since this is now the fulfillment of that oath in Genesis 15. This is basically the fulfillment of that swear that God makes to Abraham in Genesis 15, that eventually he'll come rescue the Israelites from their situation. At any rate, it's the same phraseology here, right? Why did he name his son Gershom? Ki amar ger haiti be'eretz nochriya. He said, I am a stranger in a foreign land. Okay, there it says ger ye'ed zaracha be'eretz lo lahem. There, your descendants will be a ger. It's basically let's just even put up the two phrases. Okay, how are we going to do this? We're going to do it this way. I'll just grab another tab, because this is really interesting, actually. And we're going to go to Genesis 15. And we'll go to the Hebrew. And we will go to Genesis 15. Where is it? Here. So this is Genesis 15:13. Let's put this up. Genesis 15:13. Well, I really have to do the two together, but okay, we'll put Genesis 15:13 there. Okay. And then we can look at the same time. I can do it this way. So Yomer Avram Tedam, okay. Ger ye zaracha be'eretz lo lehem. That's the phrase. Ger ye zaracha be'eretz lo lehem. Your seed shall be a stranger or strangers in a land that is not theirs. And Moshe names his son Gershom because Ki Amar Ger Haiti be'eretz nochriya. It's the same phrase. Ger Haiti be'eretz nochriya. Okay, put this here. So here it says Ger Yeh Zaracha be'eretz lo lehem, and then Moshe says Ger Haiti be'eretz instead of lo lehem or lo li. He says nochriya. It's the same idea, right? So this theme of being a stranger in a strange land is okay. We could say that when Moshe names his son Gershom, he's talking about being away from Egypt, his birthplace, and being in Midian. But I don't think that's really what it means. I think that the deeper meaning, or shall we say maybe even the real meaning, or maybe the double meaning, the Torah often has double, triple, quadruple meanings. Excuse me 1 second. Oh, it's right here. And so the double or the more intended meaning is basically a reference back to this swear that Moshe's, let's see, father's father was Levi, so that his father was Amram, his grandfather was Kohat, his great grandfather was Lewi, his great great grandfather was Yaakov, his great 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 grandfather was Yitzhak, great 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 great. I think we have 4 greats, so his great 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 grandfather Abraham received 400 years earlier, and we spoke about the 400-year measurement, right, last week and the week before. So that his great 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 grandfather had received a swear or had received a prophecy from Yehovah, using that very same phrase, Genesis 15:13, and in Exodus 2:21, Ger Haiti be'eretz nochriya. Okay, and we could talk about being a ger and a sojourner. I mean, that's I would sometimes I say that that's a PhD thesis. No, that's more. That's an entire 5-volume book on the idea of ger in the Torah and all its meanings and implications. Okay, so okay, but we're not going to dwell on that now because we'll never get past it. So let's go back here. Okay. I can get rid of this. So let me get rid of this. So we are now back in Exodus 3. So here come the in-laws. They got the 2 sons, who's the second one never mentioned again. Eliezer, we never hear from him again. Never. But we do hear from, now this is interesting also. Something I just thought of. Let's close this. Let's close this. On. So Aaron's, where is it? Right. So right. So Aaron's 4 sons are Elazar. Okay? So one of Aaron's sons, and the one who takes over for Aaron, is named Elazar. Okay? And Moshe's son is named Eliezer. And Abraham's servant, who was mentioned, or who Abraham mentions in the Brit Bein HaBitarim in Genesis 15, what we just saw was named Eliezer. Coincidence? I don't know. I mean, it could be, or it could all be. The Torah, as I always say, is very self-referential. Okay, I think the rabbis say, but they don't mean the same thing by it. But they say something like Maaseh banim, Maaseh avot siman lebanim. Okay, and they mean something else by that. Basically, what they mean is that the I forgot exactly what they mean, but I learned in yeshiva. So I don't want to misquote them, even though they misquote Karaites all the time. But at any rate, it's possible that it's interesting now that if we look at it, that Moshe has a son named Eliezer, Aaron has a son named Elazar, okay? Abraham, servant who's mentioned in the Brit Bein HaBitarim that we just saw in Genesis 15 is named Eliezer, the exact same name as the son of Moshe, right? And then we mentioned that Moshe's other son is named Gershom, and we showed how that also relates back to Genesis 15, the Brit Bein HaBitarim, that same, they call it in English, the covenant of the split parts. So both of Moshe's sons, we could say, relate back to, we could say, it's clear, I think it's clear that Gershom does, we could say that Eliezer is also relating back to Abraham's servant, who Abraham is worried is going to inherit everything he has if he doesn't have his own son, right? That's back in Genesis 15. That's also associated. That's also during that conversation, or that Brit Bein HaBitarim, the covenant of the split parts. So something's going on here with the word Eliezer, right? And Elazar. Okay. Once again, Moshe's son Eliezer, Aaron's son Elazar, Abraham's servant is Eliezer, Gershom is Moshe's other son. Gershom is clearly a reference back to Genesis 15 when God says, right? That's clearly. So is Moshe's other son, Eliezer, also a reference back to that same incident where Abraham says to God, I'm worried that Eliezer, my concern is I don't have my own flesh and blood son, and Eliezer of Damascus is going to inherit me. It's going to be my inheritance, right? I don't know. Lots of more than coincidence. Yeah, that's interesting too. So Ariella, you make a very good point. I've often wondered if Aaron's son Elazar was actually Moshe's son, but adopted into the priesthood. It's a good point. I actually was thinking that as I was saying all of this. Yeah, I was actually thinking exactly that same thing, but I don't know. Let's keep that as a question mark. I don't think so, but we can keep it as a question mark. Okay, but lots of coincidences here. Okay, I wish we had our own Torah university, and we could all be writing our PhDs in this stuff, because there'd be a lot of PhD papers to write, to sit and research, each of these various themes that come up. Okay, interesting stuff just to keep an eye out. But let's go on. Okay. Okay, so we give an explanation of why the other one is named Eliezer, or why Moshe's other son is named Eliezer, because God is my father, Elohi Avi Ezri. He is my father in that he helps me. Okay, and he saved me from the sword of Paro. So okay, Paro wanted to kill him, right? We know that from the beginning of the book of Exodus. All right, verse 5. Yavo Yitro choten Moshe. Banao wa ishto. So here comes the whole family, the whole mishpacha. So they come to Moshe. Ela midbar asher hu chone sham har Elohim. Okay, so now they're at they're in the desert, and they're at this mountain of God. So, So let's talk about that for a second. So we're trying to track the journeys of the Israelites. Let me just make sure this is set up correctly. Yes. Okay, here we go. We're tracking the journeys of the Israelites. So when last we left them, they were in Refidim. Okay? And we saw that there was a very strange statement in Refidim, when they were in Refidim, and this is in Exodus 17. Well, it's in Exodus 17. So we saw a very strange statement that when they were in this place called Refidim, which they arrive at, okay, so they went from the Midbar Sin, this is Exodus 17:1, and they came to this place Refidim, and then they have this whole thing with the water, right? And Moshe strikes. Moshe strikes the rock, and the water comes out. 1 second. So Moshe strikes the rock with his magic staff, which seems to do everything. I mean, it splits seas, it brings blood, frogs, it brings water out of rocks. And, as I mentioned last week, I really would like one of these magic staffs. I have a lot of ideas what I'd like to do with them. I'll just leave that for the imagination. But I could think of a couple of people I'd like to strike with the magic staff. Let's put it that way. And I looked on Amazon and I couldn't find it. So it's not true. Amazon really doesn't have everything. That's a falsehood. There was no magic staff on Amazon to be found anywhere. Okay. Does the fact that Elazar is spelled different have anything to do with it? How does it change the meaning? So Eliezer and Elazar, they're basically the same thing, right? Elazar, I guess you could say, is God helped, and Eliezer is my God is a help. My God is it's basically the same thing. It's basically the same thing. Okay. So here we go with the magic staff. We're in Exodus 17, but that's not the point I want to. So Moshe strikes the rock with the magic staff, and out comes water. But where is this rock? So this is very interesting. If we look at Exodus chapter 17, verse 6, it says, God says, Hineni omed lefanecha sham al hatzur bechorev. I shall stand before you there on the rock in Chorev. Okay? But Chorev is Mount Sinai. But they're not at Mount Sinai. They're in Refidim. Right? They just come from the Midbar Sin, which is, I believe, related to Sinai. Okay? And it's also related to Sneh, I believe. Again, place names and names in general can have multiple meanings. So this could be related to the Midbar Sin. That's why it's called Mount Sinai. And it can also be related to the Sneh. The Sneh means the bush, the burning bush, right? Because that happened at Hara Elohim. It happened at Mount Sinai, this Hara Elohim. Okay? So there seems to be a double meaning there. And at any rate, so they go from the Midbar Sin to Refidim. Okay? So Midbar Sin, the general area could have just been called Sin. And now they're in a place called Refidim, which might be just a specific area within this general area of Sin. Okay? Or near it. At any rate, they're in this place with Refidim, and now God in verse 6 says he's going to stand on the rock on Chorev. Well, Chorev is the other name for Mount Sinai, right? Or at least we think. That's what we've always been taught, that Chorev is the other name for Mount Sinai. So let me just annotate this again. So this is Exodus 17:6. So Chorev, let me just 6. And so what the heck is going on here? So they're in Refidim, and he's standing on Chorev. So if Chorev is Mount Sinai, does that mean that Refidim is basically, when they camp at Refidim, they're already there at Mount Sinai? Or is Chorev just a general place name? Like the area is called Chorev? Maybe Midbar Sin, maybe the Sin Desert is the surrounding area, and then the district is Chorev, and then in it you have the Hara Elohim, you have the Mount Horeb or the Mount Sinai, right? I don't know. And we're going to have to keep an eye out for this stuff, but it is very strange. Okay? So, not strange. I don't like to use the word strange. It's very interesting. It requires a lot more thought. So, at any rate, now we have a situation of where were we? Right. So now all of a sudden they're at Hara Elohim. יבוא יתרו חותן משה ובניו ואשתו אל משה אל המדבר אשר הוא חונה שם הר אלוהים. Okay? So Moshe is now at the Har Elohim. Okay? So, but there's no indication that he moved from Refidim. It doesn't say anything about, in Exodus 17, it doesn't say anything at all about Moshe leaving Refidim. Last we checked in with him, they were in Refidim. They hadn't moved. But nonetheless, let's put this down here. Okay? Because even here, the feet of the Amalekites, V'yavo Amalek v'yilachem im Yisrael b'Refidim. Here they're still in Refidim with the whole Amalekite thing when Yeshua goes out and Moshe is standing there with Hur and Aaron holding Moshe's hand up while he holds the rock. And they're still in Refidim at that point. And there's no indication that there's no explicit statement that they moved from Refidim. And now all of a sudden here they are at Hara Elohim. So we're going to put this down here in Exodus 18:5. So this is Exodus 18:5. So now they're suddenly at Har Elohim. You don't know when they arrived. We'll talk about when they depart later. Arrival verses, Exodus. No, there's no arrival verses. So we're going to say that's again Exodus 18:5. Exodus 18:5 mentions, says they are at Elohim. Grab this. Copy and paste. It's my best friend. Elohim, but does not mention any travel from Refidim. Okay. So that leads us to speculate. What is this Hara Elohim? Right? Just back a little bit. Okay. Yeah. Attempt to make it one line did not work. Okay, there we go. All right. So yeah, so we'll have to keep an eye out and figure out what's going on. Suddenly they're magically at Hara Elohim, right? Hara Elohim is clearly, okay, so let's talk about this too, is it? Let me open it up in a new tab. I'm going to do this. Do we have a timeline for arrival at Horeb and then the arrival at Sinai? Yeah, so we'll talk about that. And we don't have a time for the arrival, no, but we do have dates mentioned, which we'll talk about in a second, and we will see how we'll get to it, Ariella. I know where your question's heading, but we'll get to that in a second. Okay, so here we are in, where was I? All right, so we want to go to Exodus 2. I believe it's Exodus 2. No, it's not Exodus 2. It's the burning bush. Exodus 3. So where is it? Here we go. Exodus 3, verse 1. Let's check the Hebrew out on that one. So Moshe is minding his own business. He's not a prophet yet. He's just tending to his father-in-law's flocks. His father-in-law here is called Yitro, Jethro, Kohen Midian. We know that already. Winhag on Achar Midbar. So he drove it beyond the desert, or maybe deep out into the desert. Yavo el har ha-Elohim, Choreva. So he comes to the mountain of God, to Chorev. Okay? So is Chorev, we always think that the same name of Chorev is the mountain of God, but it's not necessarily. The mountain of God could be within Chorev, right? Remember in the book of Genesis when we were talking about, and I mentioned that this morning, when we were talking about Abraham's travels, or when we were talking about not only Abraham basically, his travels, and no, not only Abraham, also Isaac, no, also Jacob, Abraham and Jacob, right? When it mentions the place where Laban lived, and also where Terach, Abraham's father, was passing on the way to Canaan with Abraham. So we have three different names that are mentioned in those for that various place name. There was Haran, there was Padan Aram, and there was Aram Naharaim. And as we investigated further, we saw that Haran seems to be the name of the city. Padan Aram seems to be the name of the state. We can call it the district or the state. And Aram Naharaim seems to be the name of the country. In other words, the Aramean kingdom. So maybe the same thing is going on here. Chorev may just be a district. Okay? And when it says Har Chorev, it doesn't mean that the mountain is named Chorev. It could just mean that the mountain was in the district named Chorev. Okay? It's, again, not 100% clear. We have to keep an eye out for what's going on here. At any rate, we know that the whole burning bush happened at this place called Hara Elohim, the mountain of God. That for sure is the same as Mount Sinai. Okay, and then we have the whole burning bush thing, and then what happened? Okay, it's no big deal. So, and then where was it? So here we have the burning bush, and scan through in the English, it'll take quicker that way. No, I'll just go Hebrew. Okay, I can't find it right now, but it says, no, let me look in the English for 1 second. Just be able to scan it much more quickly. Yeah, here it is. Exodus 3:12 says, go back to the Hebrew. ויאמר כי אהיה עמך וזה לך האות כי אנוכי שלחתיך בהוציאך את העם ממצרים תעבדון את האלוהים על ההר הזה. So in Exodus chapter 3 verse 12, God says to Moshe, יאמר כי אהיה עמך, and he says, I will be with you, and this וזה לך האות, and this will be for you a sign. A sign of what? A sign that I'm with you. Hold on a second. Sufi, what are you doing? Let me just let the cat out. Suf. Come to it. Well, just take Sufi's bread and cake. Okay, fine. Keep going here, but just don't let him jump on the table. All right? Let Suf stay outside. All right. So, yeah. So the sign is going to be, okay, this is going to be the sign that I'm with you. Because when I let you go, when I make you go, in other words, when I take you out, it's disturbing me, please, okay? When I take you out of, when I take the people out of Egypt, they will worship, or they will serve God. They will worship God on this mountain, right? And this mountain is clearly called Har. I'm sorry, I can't have this yet. Put him outside. I know, but you have to take him out here, okay? I can't have him falling around and jumping on the table. So put him in the garage. Okay? Yes, of course he is. Okay, he's already bothering me. Okay? You got to get him out of here. All right? I'm right in the middle of the Torah study, so please. Okay? Okay. Put them in the garage if you have to. All right. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So this is clearly the place where. So this is called Hara Elohim, right? That's where Moshe went. It says explicitly here in verse 1, Hara Elohim. And the sign is going to be that when I take you out of Egypt, you're going to worship me on this mountain. That's clearly a reference to what's going on here. Now we go back to Exodus 18, okay? and Yavo Yitro Choten Moshe Uvanavo Ishto El Moshe El Hamidbar Asher Hu Chone Sham Har HaElohim. So this is where they are now. When Yitro comes, he's coming to visit Moshe at this place, Har Elohim, which is the same place exactly where the burning bush incident happened, and where God said this will be a sign that when I take you out of Egypt, you will worship me on this mountain. Okay, so this is where they are now. And going back to our place names, we have no mention whatsoever. We know that when they arrived in Refidim, that's mentioned explicitly in Exodus 17:1, there's no mention of them leaving Refidim. And now in Exodus 18:5, they're suddenly at Hara Elohim. So does that mean that Hara Elohim is within Refidim? Is it also within an area called Chorev? It's also called Sinai. Does that mean it's within the desert of Sin, which is where they were in Exodus 16:1? I don't know. Anyone want to do a PhD thesis? All right. We really have to study a Qara'ite university, not the one that already exists, which is useless, but a real Qara'ite university, and figure some of these things out. Okay, so let's just keep an eye on it, as I always say. That's the best we can do here. Okay, we'd say Moshe likrato chotno. Okay, so here comes blah blah blah. Okay, so here come the in-laws, as we said. So verse 7, Yitze Moshe likrat chotno, and so Moshe went out towards his father-in-law. V'yishtachu, v'yishaklo, v'yishalu ish le'reu l'shalom yavo ha'ohela. So they kiss each other, they bow down before each other, they kiss each other, or one kisses the other. I think it just means they kiss each other. And they, say, how are you doing? They talk, they ask each other about how they're doing, basically. How are you? Why? יספר משה לחותנו את כל אשר עשה יהוה לפרעה ולמצרים על אודות ישראל את כל התלאה אשר מצאתם בדרך ויצילם יהוה. So basically Moshe tells him the whole story about what happened. This word tila'ah I'm not too familiar with, so I just want to check it out. Just for myself, את כל התלאה אשר מצאתנו. Okay, got it. All right, so Asher Matzatam B'derech Vatzilem Yehovah, verse 9, Wa Yahad Yitro Al Kol Tova Asher Asa Yehovah. So Yahad does not mean unified. In this case, it's related to the word Hadva, which means to rejoice. Very non-common word, as we can see. Okay, yep, Samuel. Okay, so rejoices or is happy Yitro about all the good things, all the good Asher aside Yehovah Israel that Yehovah did for Israel, Asher Hitzilom Yad Mitzrayim, in saving them from Egypt. Verse 10. Yitro Baruch Yehovah, and Yitro says, "Blessed is Yehovah." Now this is interesting because we saw before that Yitro is the Kohen of Midian. In fact, a lot of times when it mentions his name, like here, Yishma Yitro Kohen Midian, he was a priest of some Midianite to the El Elyon. Avi Melech. Thank you. Malki Tzedek is a priest to the God on high, or the most high God, right? So we don't know who he was, a priest of Midian, right? But we don't know to which god he was a priest. Is he now a convert? The rabbis say that Jethro basically converted. Well, I mean, definitely in a certain sense, he's now blessing and praising Yehovah. He's definitely seems to be a Yehovah follower at this point. And whether he was before a priest to a single god or to some foreign god, we don't know. Okay. At any rate, okay. ויאמר יתרו ברוך יהוה אשר הציל אתכם מיד מצרים ומיד פרעה אשר הציל את העם מתחת יד מצרים. So blessed is God for doing all these things. Verse 11. עתה ידעתי כי גדול יהוה מכל האלוהים. Okay, so this is interesting. So maybe this kind of answers our question, right? I don't get these weird, whenever I get one of these things, so now I'm blocking them. Seems like it's all in the same area. Yes, in the university. Okay. Well, Ariella, if you're serious, we can talk about. I've had this idea for a while, and I actually ran it by with a number of other people of doing a Karaite journal, like you know what a journal is, like an academic journal, except for Karaites. But we'll talk about it another time. And I can't now because I'm at this point, as I mentioned earlier, I'm working hard on my my master's thesis at this point, and I just don't have time for anything else until probably until the summer. Okay. At any rate, Yomer Yitro Baruch Yehovah. So in verse 11, he says, "Ata yadati ki gadol Yehovah mikol Elohim." Now I know, or now I've realized that God is greater than any other god. Is the greatest among the gods, okay, or greater than all gods. Ki b'davar asher zadu alehem, because of this thing that he has planned for you, or that he's laid out for you. Let's say. Zadu. I'm sorry. Acted. All right. Yeah. Ki b'davar asher zadu alehem. The translation for that. Verse 11. We'll go Robert Alter for a second. Chapter 18, verse 11. For in this thing that they scheme. Yeah, that's the way I originally translated. Okay, so he agrees with my original translation. Okay, right. Okay. So, verse 12. ויקח יתרו חותן משה עולה וזבחים לאלוהים ויבוא אהרון וכל זקני ישראל לאכול לחם עם חותן משה לפני האלוהים. Okay, so they're all having a nice meal together. It's a great reunion. Here come the kids. Here comes the wife. Here comes the father-in-law, and everybody's happy. Then we have the advice that Jethro gives Moses. And I'll kind of go through this quickly because I really want to focus on other things. So I'm going to read through pretty much, I think, until the end of the chapter, unless there's something else that I want to say, okay, explicitly. ויהי ממחרת וישב משה לשפוט את העם, יעמוד העם על משה מן הבוקר עד הערב. Verse 14, וירא חותן משה את כל אשר הוא עושה לעם, ויאמר מה הדבר הזה אשר אתה עושה לעם, מדוע אתה יושב לבדך וכל העם ניצב עליך מן הבוקר עד ערב. So now Jethro is going to give Moshe some, I think a rabbi once said to me, he's going to, what do they call those companies? Like management consulting companies. So Jethro is acting as Moshe's management consultant. He's going to like tell him how to like reorganize the business a little bit, to make it work better, right? So yeah. ויאמר משה לחותנו כי יבוא אליי העם לדרוש אלוהים. So why are you sitting here all day long? Verse 16, כי יהיה להם דבר בא אליי ושפטתי בין איש ובין רעהו והודעתי את חוקי האלוהים ואת תורתו. Is there anything I need to say here? Well, then they come to me, Moshe says to Yitro, they come to me in order to seek out God. Okay? Well, it doesn't mean explicitly seek out God, right? Because then Moshe answers that I judge them. Doesn't mean it doesn't seem to imply that he's asking God for each judgment, right? That would be a little bit ridiculous. But what it does imply is that Moshe is the head of the nation. He's in direct contact with God, and so when it says lidrosh Elohim, it means to find out what God wants, really, right? And that's the context here. So they're coming out they're coming to Moshe to find out, what does God want us to do? And Moshe, who is knowledgeable of God, he's the intermediary between the nation and God at this point, is judging them based on what he believes or thinks or knows that he wants that God wants them to do. In other words, he's laying down the law of God for them, but it doesn't mean they're actually coming and asking for God's answer for every little thing. Okay, so the importance there is it sets up a hierarchy already. There's already a hierarchy, right? And we'll talk about that hierarchy a little bit more. Verse 18, Naval, Navol Tibol Gam Ata Gam Am Azeh Asher Imach Ki Kaved Mimcha Hadavar Lo Tuchal Asel Levadecha. So Yitro says you're taking too much on yourself. Okay? Verse 19, Ata Shema Bekoli Yi'atzcha Wa Yehi Elohim Imach. Listen to me. It's just I just love the language, right? Now listen to my voice, and I will advise you, and God shall be with you. It's always like this. I don't know how to explain this flowery language, or not even flowery. That's the wrong word. There's a certain way that ancient people interacted with each other, where they would it was almost like they would start everything and end everything with a blessing, right? Listen to my voice, and I shall advise you, and may God be with you, or God will be with you, right? So it's not just do this. It's Yitro is setting it up, so he's showing that he's really trying to help Moshe. That Moshe should listen because it's in Moshe's best interest and in the nation's best interest. At any rate, Haye atal am mula Elohim. You shall be for the people before God. In other words, you shall be the intermediary between the people and God. And you shall bring matters to God. והזהרת אתם את החוקים ואת התורות והודעת להם את הדרך ילכו בה ואת המעשה אשר יעשון. And you shall instruct them, warn them, separate them, teach them. It's one of those words that is not usually have a good translation into English. הזהרתם אתם את החוקים ואת התורות. So the statutes and the instructions, right? And sometimes we have chukim and torot and mishpatim and judgments, right? And so no, I'm not going to get into that now. We'll get into that another time because we'll see other places where it is. Basically, you'll show them what the right thing is to do. Verse 21. So now you find strong men or brave men who are God-fearing, who are men of truth, sonei batza, who hate, not bribes, but hate personal gain. So what are the four qualities that Yitro says that Moshe should look for in men? Brave, God-fearing, men of truth, and those who hate personal gain. Okay? I'd say that's a pretty good list of four qualities for a good judge and a good leader. Okay? وَصَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ سَرَيْ أَلَفِيمْ وَسَرَيْ مَئَوْتْ سَرَيْ حَمِشِيمْ وَسَرَيْ أَسَرَوْتْ. And then you shall basically, these are different levels of, it's a hierarchy is what we're talking about here, right? So you have your leaders over, or ministers, how do we translate Sar? Rulers over thousands, over hundreds, over 50, and over 10, right? So that would basically imply, although it doesn't say so explicitly, that would be the only explanation, right? That there's a hierarchy. There's kind of people that rule over, let's say, 10 people or asarot. Yeah, there's a leader of 10, and then on top of that is a leader of 50, and on top of that is a leader of 100, and on top of that is a leader of 1,000. Actually, it says, yeah, I guess you could put it that way. It's I don't think the numbers are meant to be exact. I think it's just an idea. Okay, but let's pretend for a second the numbers are exact. So you've got leaders over 10 people, and then you've got leaders over 50. So if the leaders over 10 people, if each leader over 10 people, or there would have to be 5 leaders over 10 people, or there would have to be 1 leader over 50 controlling the 5 leaders, or leading or ruling the leaders over 10, right? And then you have Sarim, and then you have Sarim Ot, so there would have to be 200 leaders leading each of the controlling, I'll use the word control, but I don't mean it in that way so much, controlling the ones over 50, and then 10 of the 1,000 leaders, of the leaders over 1,000 controlling the leaders over 100, right? So let's break that down a little bit. So you have 10 leaders. I'm sorry, you have 1 leader over the 10s. Over the 50, that would be 5 of the leaders over the 10s. Okay? So that would be 5 groups of the leaders of 10, and then 2 groups of the leaders of 50, and then 10 groups of leaders of 100. I don't know. You get the idea. It's a hierarchy. Okay? It's basically a hierarchy like an army. And then on top of that is Moshe, right? He's the leader over everybody. And on top of that is God. Okay? The point I'm trying to make is it's a clear hierarchy that's being set up here. Okay? And these leaders are also judges, as it says in verse 22. Shafatu et ha'am b'chol עת. So they should judge the nation at all times. Wahaya kol hadavar hagadol yaviu elecha v'chol hadavar hakaton yishpatu hem. So every big thing they bring to you, and all the smaller things they judge on their own, right? So it seems to be setting up a hierarchy, just like we would have, let's say, in the American system, right? So the American system would have, let's see, how does it work in the federal system? You've got regional judges, the Supreme Court. I forgot, right? There's the 9th district. So those are district judges. 9th. So the district are higher than the regional judges. I think I might be getting the nomenclature a little bit wrong, but you've got your regional judges. On top of them are the district judges, right? So they basically rule over a bunch of regional judges, and then you have a Supreme Court which rules over the district judges, right? I think that's the way it goes, but you get the idea. So the American system has a hierarchy, right? The Supreme Court is at the top of the American system. Below it are the district judges. I think there are 9 districts or something like that. And then each of those districts has lower judges, right? So if a case is first brought to, I believe, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know for sure, but a case is first brought to a local judge. This is within the federal system. I'm not talking about within the state system. It's brought to a local judge. If there's an appeal, then it goes to the district judge. So they deal with only a subset of the cases which cannot be resolved by the local judges. And then if there's an appeal to the judgment of the district judge, then it goes to the Supreme Court, and they're the final word. Okay, there's no God in America. There used to be. Unfortunately, it's not anymore. So it doesn't go any higher than that. I guess maybe it goes up to a Satan or a Baal or whatever the heck they're into these days. We read just this week that there's a group that is now running an after-school Satan club in an elementary school. Was it an elementary school or a junior high school? Whatever the heck it was. An afternoon Satan club in an elementary school somewhere in the United States. So, kiddies, join up for your local Satan club. And then there was I think it was the Baal, statue of Baal that was set up in Times Square in New York City about 2 years ago or something like that. At any rate, I guess after the Supreme Court these days, it goes up to either Satan or Baal or some other foreign god, or nowhere. At any rate, you get the idea. It's a hierarchy, right? And it's the same thing that's being set up here. Okay, and in the American federal system, it would be the same thing. So the local judges or the local courts would have jurisdiction over a small area or small amount of people. The district judges over a much larger amount of people, and the Supreme Court over everybody. Right? So it's the same setup here. Moshe's at the top of this. He's the Supreme Court basically, and then there's one level above that, and that's God. Okay, if Moshe needs to, he can ask God what to do, and we see that in a number of cases, such as when we're going to talk about much later on in the book of Numbers, when we're going to talk about the case of the daughters of Tzalafchad. Moshe goes and asks God when we have the Mikoshesha Eitzim, when we have the person who goes out and gathers wood on the Shabbat, and they hold him in a jail, and then Moshe goes and asks God what to do with him, and God says kill him. So there are times when Moshe is going to go to God to ask the answer, but that's not always, it would seem. Okay, so that's the setup we have. Okay, a hierarchical court setup, and a hierarchical court setup with Moshe as the Supreme Court, and then one layer above that, which is God Himself. Okay, if Moshe can't resolve it, then he goes directly to God. Okay, right. And where were we? So if you set up the system of hierarchical court system, then this will make life easy on you, him, and so this will basically relieve it, make your work lighter, and they can help you carry the burden. Basically, linso means to lift up or carry. So basically, he's saying that this hierarchical court system will help you carry some of the burden, and you don't have to sit there from the morning until the night. My battery is about to go dead. So just give me 1 second. Actually, I think what we're going to do here is take a break, about 5 minutes. I'll put a little music on, and we'll take a break. It's now 20 after the hour. Let's say about a 5 to 10 minute break. No, we'll say about a 7. Well, I'll get back as soon as I can. Let me just take care of 1 or 2 things, and then we'll get back. So I'm going to put on a little music. Right. So share the share. Oh, what so the way to survive or yourself and entire place their place the Israelites be one that was imposed on the yeah. the Torah is going to be stated. Well, come away. Bishmam kol hashar, that's 4. So Moses we have we have Rafim so Moshe this restructure, this structure and to el why in giving his father is just most when the white are next, so it's one of his main duties. Okay, so here we are. Somewhere this is Ariella is talking about the time, the gift of and I should okay. It's Israel Sinai. So third of the out of the almost they came so if he didn't vote, okay, so Sinai same as or maybe it is Sinai within it's up to this 90 team. It doesn't make sense clearly. So they come to when they were saw in Exodus last week's where God visit says that Moses camped at the mountain of God. Right? Where was that? Right. Har 8:5. We mentioned this 8:5, but there was the so let's forget about the Chodesh third. So it says they came to the sort of ייסעו מרפידים יבואו מדבר סין ויחנו מדבר ויחנו ישראל נגד. So this seems to be order, right? What already happened. when you clear. On here, this is had already came to the scene clearly because it's all hard to see. The so that is our spread. So they refidim. So it's refidim, and they to I'm sorry. This. So this C9 is a is area within no, and what's changed? Bro, C9 a into they it does not mean what's in two. This thought sentence again of would be an interest. So really, it's these are the deep down. It's very in the third, third month. So now we're going to get the whole of Shavuot. They arrive to the 9th month. So maybe now looking to Bible. In the desert of according to 19 third month. What guys praise on the third month? Israel, they they can, which is clear. Right? 1 second. 1 second. I just wonder. desert month. Third month me so he interprets it as on the third new moon. And let's read his comment. Umberto Casuto aptly observes that instead of the usual that marriage that new meaning Hebrews they make new commentators. Okay, so what they're saying, she third month is referring back to this phrase "b'chodesh shlishi" on the third month, and he's saying that that means the first of the third month, or in other words, the new moon of the third month. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. The Bayom Hazeh could just be referred to this day when they come Ba'u Midbar Sinai. Let me just read this again to myself. The Chodesh Shishi letzeit bnei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim Bayom Hazeh Ba'u Midbar Sinai. This phrase Bayom Hazeh could just be used to point out the specialness or the importance of the day when they come into the desert of Sinai, and not necessarily be referring back to this B'chodesh Shlishi, meaning emphasizing that's the new moon. So to point that out, I'd like to go for a second to, let's see how we're going to do this. I think it's in Leviticus 23. No, I can find it. One second. One second. No, I'm thinking of a specific phrase and I can't remember where it is. Here it is. Exodus 23:29. Ki kol hanefesh asher lo ti'unu ba'etzem hayom hazeh, on the self same day. So this verb, we have the same phrase hayom hazeh, or here it's ba'etzem hayom hazeh, but hayom hazeh means to point out. It's a phrase which points out that this particular day is important. The point being that when it says here Bayom Hazeh, this might not mean that it's emphasizing that it's the first day of the third month. But let's say it is. Okay, let's just, for the sake of argument, let's see how. Let me just check one or two other. Let's check Everett Fox and see how he translates it. Yeah. So he also says on the third new moon after the going out of the children of Israel from the land of Egypt, on that very day, they came to the wilderness of Sinai. So, okay, I'm not 100% convinced that this necessarily, it could just mean sometime in the third month, although it doesn't mention the day, right? If we look at, for instance, in Exodus 16:1, let's look at that for a second. So in 16:1 it says, this is going back 2 parshas ago, no, last parsha, they went from Elim and they came, and all the children of Israel, all the congregation of Israel, all the witnesses of Israel came to the desert of Sin, Asher ben Elim, between Elim and between Sinai. Okay, so now we know the Sin is between Elim and between Sinai. I think I actually have that written down. Yeah. וחמישה עשר ליום לחודש השני. So here it says on the 15th day of the second month, that's when they got to the Midbar Sin, right? And it says, it gives a month, the Chodesh HaSheni, so we know we're already in the 15th day of the second month, okay? Then, after that, they travel to Rephidim. We have the water from the rock, we have the thing with the Amalekites, and then they've still got to travel. Then we have the visit of Jethro, which probably already took place when they're in Sinai, from the context there. So this does not necessarily mean the first day of the third month. It could just mean in the third month. And I would like to find other phrases where it mentions the month but doesn't mention the day. And I don't have any offhand. That would be something I would have to do on the side. But I don't think this necessarily means on the first day of the third month, as it is usually understood. Because Chodesh, yes, does mean new moon. But by extension, remember we've spoken many times about the idea that there's a base meaning for a word, and then by extension. So by extension, it means month. Okay? Just out of curiosity, what does the NIV say on that one? Yeah, on the first day of the third month. So we get a whole bunch of translations that are saying on the first day of the third month. I'm wondering if there are any that don't give that translation. So the New Living Translation, exactly 2 months after the Israelites left Egypt. That's interesting. So it's 2 months after the Israelites left Egypt. Then we know they left Egypt on the 15th of the first month. That would make it the 15th of the third month, according to this translation. On the third new moon, in the third month. So this Bedean Study Bible, which I have no idea what it is, it says in the third month, in the third month, in the third month, in the third month. So most of the translations here seem to say in the third month and not on the, here, God's Word translation. 2 months after the Israelites left Egypt, on the third new moon, JPS, which is basically a Jewish translation, in the third month, after the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt. So there's a lot of disagreement, right? It's not clear what that means, is the point. It's definitely not clear what that means. But Robert Alter says it means on the new moon. Everett Fox, it says it means on the new moon. Let's see what Rashi. I remember I call him Rash because when I used to type in the word Rashi into Microsoft Word, it would autocorrect me to Rash. So ever since then I called him Rash. Let's see what Rash says. The greatest Torah interpreter in the history of all Torah. He's one of the worst ever. But sometimes he says something interesting. So this is 19:1. Let's see what he says here. Oh, wait. I should go back here. So chapter 19. 1. Biyom hazeh b'rosh chodesh. So Rashi says on the new moon, lo hayat tzarich lichtov ela biyom hahu, mahu biyom hazeh, she'yu divrei Torah hadashim alecha ki'ilu hayom nitanam. So he says that, okay. So he says that really it should have said Bayomahu on that day, but it says Bayomazeh, Mao Bayomazeh. And why does it say on this day rather than on that day? Shiu Divrei Torah Chadashim Alecha Ki'ilu Ayom Nitanam. That it says this day as if it should be that the Torah was given to you on this very day. Okay, that was given to you today. Okay, nice little midrash, but the only thing. One second. Okay, forget that. But the thing is that Rashi also says Berosh Chodesh. So Rashi goes with on the new moon. So my point is, I don't think on the third month. Does this mean the new moon of the third month? Not so clear. Okay, so we'll leave it at that. But let's pretend that it does mean the first day of the third month. So I want to show you where the rabbis get their idea that that Hagashavuot, that Shavuot is connected with the giving of the Torah. And I learned this many years ago from a rabbi of mine, and then I looked it up on my own, and I saw he was wrong. So it's not even clear that this means the first day of the third month. But let's go with that for a second. Let's pretend it does, because it could. Okay. Well, we know that on this third month, on this first day of the third month, let's assume it's the first day of the third month, that they come to the desert of Sinai and they camped against the mountain, right? I should add this to my little thing. On the third month, it's clear. I'll get rid of this. It's not necessarily. And then they camped against or next to the mountain. We'll say next to the mountain, and this is this 19:2. So this is clearly out of order from the previous chapter, because we know in the previous chapter that when Jethro comes, he visits Moshe, right? We saw that they were camping at the mountain of God. Okay, V'yavo Yitro, this is Exodus 18:5, the previous chapter. V'yavo Yitro, Choten Moshe uvanav ishto el Moshe el Midbar asher hu choneh sham har Elohim. Okay, so Moshe, when Yitro comes, they're already camped at the mountain of God, and then we have the whole advice thing, and etc., etc. So let's even say that, let's give the rabbis the benefit of doubt and say that they arrived at the mountain. Okay, first of all, it says they came to the Midbar Sinai in the third month, but we'll say it means the first day of the third month. That they came to Har Sinai and they camped against the mountain. So let's say they came to the mountain on the first day of the third month. Okay? Well, we already have Yitro comes and gives Moshe his advice about setting up the hierarchical court system. Well, that can't all be done in a day, right? That's got to take some time. Unless we want to say that happened after the giving of the Ten Commandments. But that doesn't make sense to me, right? Why would that be stuck in here? Anyway, let's go on. Let's again give the rabbis the benefit of the doubt. Let's forget about the whole Yitro thing. Okay, let's pretend he didn't come. So they arrived. Okay, no. Yeah. So they arrived. I'm trying to think out loud here. Right. So they arrived. We know that they arrived sometime in the third month, or they arrived into the desert of Sinai, let's say on the first of the third month. And let's say on that same day, they camped against the mountain, which is clearly Mount Sinai or Har Elohim, the mountain of God. Okay, let's just say. Moshe Allah ela Elohim v'yikra elav Yehovah min har. So now Moshe goes up to God, and God calls to him. V'yikra Yehovah. Yehovah calls to him from the mountain. Lemor kotomar lebeit Yaakov v'taged levnei Yisrael. So you shall say to the house of Jacob, and you shall relate, and you shall tell to the children of Israel. Right? This is kind of poetic when it says, it's like in parallelism, Beit Yaakov and Bnei Yisrael. It's the same thing, but it's poetic. Okay? We have this kind of repetition using different words as always, basically being poetic or serving as emphasis. So let's just keep in mind the times, but the time we're talking about here. Okay, and let's see what's going on here. Okay. Okay, so Moses they camp at the mountain. If it's cold, then put the other thing near you. Okay. So this is what God says you're going to tell the children of Israel. You saw what I did to Egypt, and I lifted you up upon the wings of eagles, upon eagles' wings, right? And I brought you here. I think this is the first time we have this phrase, Kanfei Nisharim. Where I used to live in Jerusalem, the big street nearby was called Rehov Kanfei Nisharim Street, the Wings of Eagle Street. At any rate, Vavi etchem elai. Okay? Ata'im shamoa tishma'u beqoli u'shamatem et briti. Wa'aitem li svula. Mikol ha'amim ki li kol ha'aretz. And now, if you shall certainly listen to my voice, hear my voice, or heed my voice, and keep my covenant. Has there been a covenant made yet? Not yet. Not that I can think of. There's no covenant that's been made at this point. The covenant is yet to come. There will be multiple covenants. What, Bo? Okay, so I'll tell you what. So just give me a minute and I'll turn on the other heater, okay? So, and keep my covenant. As far as I can see, there's been no covenant made, but let's just take a look. So that's a different covenant. I will establish my covenant with you. So in Exodus, there's a bunch of covenants that have been spoken about. Let's take a look at this for a second. Okay, so I guess you could say there have been a number of covenants. That's like, for instance, the Brit Milah. So maybe it means in a general sense, okay? But if we're talking about a covenant that's been made with the entire nation since they've come out of Egypt, there has been no covenant that's been made yet, okay? So maybe it's talking about the covenant that will be made. That would be more logical, okay? Or maybe just talking about covenant in general sense. Anyway, let's move on. So if you listen to my voice, if you heed my voice and keep my covenant, then you will be for me a schula, a special nation or a special treasure, right? Mikol ha'amim, from all the nations, you'll be my special nation among all the nations. Kili kol ha'aretz, because the entire world is mine. Okay, so this basic first statement, there's no laws given here. It's basically God just saying, I want to make a covenant with you, and if you keep my covenant, if you keep my laws, then you will be a special nation to me. I'm the ruler of the entire world, and I want to make you the special nation within my world. V'temti uli mamlechet kohanim, and you shall be for me a kingdom of priests, v'roi kadosh, and a holy nation. Ela hadvarim asher tidaber el bnei Israel. Okay, so these are the things that you should say to the children of Israel. So this is really the first statement. So the first statement that God makes to Moshe at Mount Sinai is not the Ten Commandments. It's this, you be mine and I'll be yours, and you be my special nation and I'll be your God, and etc. So one of the points I want to make regarding the timing here is we have all kinds of intervening events before the the Ten Commandments are even given, before the Torah, as the rabbis are talking about when they celebrate the giving of the Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah. They're talking about the giving of the Ten Commandments. Well, we have this whole thing. So we have three things so far. They come to the desert of Sinai on the Chodesh Shlishi, which could mean which may just mean sometime in the third month, or it may mean, as some of the translations, 2 months after their exit from Egypt, which would mean the 15th of the third month, or it could mean the first of the third month. Well, the rabbis clearly interpret this to mean the first of the third month, because this is where they are able to derive the fact that Shavuot falls out on the same day as the giving of the Torah. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say that it means the first of the third month. So they get there. Moshe goes up to the mountain and has this whole back and forth with God. Okay? So how long is that? It's got to take a day, right? I mean, what do you think? The whole thing happened in an hour? So we have that intervening. That clearly happened before the giving of the Torah, because, right, this is clearly chronological here. Then we know that Jethro came to visit Moshe when he's already camped at the mountain. So was this before the giving of the Torah? I would think so, because it occurs before the relation of the story of the giving of the Torah. But then again, we saw over here that now it goes back and says that they traveled from Refidim to Sinai. So this is before Yitro, right? Because they weren't yet at the mountain of God. So could we say that Yitro happened after the giving of the Ten Commandments? Maybe, but I don't think so, because I think that it's talking about, I think this is kind of in chronological order. But now when we're talking about the Ten Commandments, now it goes back and now this is kind of a summary sentence, or kind of an introduction how they got to the mountain. Okay, even though they were already in the mountain in the previous verse. So we could say there are two intervening things. Okay, they're camped at the mountain. Okay, Moshe goes up to the mountain, or Yitro comes and sets up the whole hierarchical court system. That's got to take a couple of days, right? Moshe is supposed to seek out all of these different people, God-fearing and brave and not wanting personal gain, et cetera, and he's got to set up the whole hierarchy. That's got to take time. It's got to take a couple of days, maybe even a couple of weeks. So if that happened before the giving of the Torah, that already pushes us ahead weeks after the first day of the third month, if this even is the first day of the third month, which is not clear. But best case scenario, giving the rabbis the benefit of the doubt, we'll say it's the first day of the third month. Yitro comes. They set up the whole hierarchical court system. Let's say that's got to take a week, right? At least. And then Moshe goes up. He doesn't get the Ten Commandments at this point. He just gets this, I will say just, it's a beautiful statement. He gets a statement of, I'll be yours, you'll be mine. You be my people and I'll be your God. And then he comes down and relates that to the people. This is clearly before the Ten Commandments are given, right? So we're already have two intervening events. Possibly, again, if we really want to give the rabbis the benefit of the doubt, we could say Yitro occurred afterwards, and it's just stated before. But certainly, this one intervening event where Moshe goes up, okay, and also it says they arrived at the desert of Sinai on the first day of the third month, assuming this is the first day of the third month, and then they camped against the mountain or next to the mountain. How long did it take them to get to the desert of Sinai? and then get to the mountain. Okay, well, let's say it means that they got to the desert of Sinai and camped against the mountain on the first day of the third month. Again, that's another possible intervening incident. So we have 3 possible intervening incidents or events. Coming to the Sinai desert and then going to the mountain. Okay, but that's iffy. Okay, that's sketchy there. That it could just mean they came to the mountain on the first day of the third month. Second, Yitro coming, which, based on its placement in Exodus 18, would seem to imply that it occurred before the giving of the 10 commandments. Maybe we'll have some further proof later on. But again, let's go crazy and really give the rabbi the benefit of the doubt and says it occurred afterwards. Okay, but if it occurred before, that's got to take a couple of days, a week. We'll say a week, right? So that already pushes us ahead to 1 week into the third month, which is already past Shavuot. Okay, so that intervening event, and then we have this third intervening event of Moshe going up to the mountain and basically God giving this beautiful statement about, "I'll be your God, you be my nation." So we have up to three potential intervening events. One for sure, this last one that I just mentioned, that's already going to push us ahead a couple of days past the first day of the third month. But you'll see the rabbis, in order to synchronize Rosh Chodesh, in order to synchronize Shavuot with the giving of the Torah, they need all of this time. Okay, and I'll show you why I'm going to show you why in a second. So first of all, let's talk about when does Shavuot occur according to the rabbis. For that, I'm going to go to one of my articles that I wrote in Karaite Insights, and I'll post a link to it. One second here. So one thing. Right. Okay. So let's see one thing. Okay. So let me make this a little bit larger. Easier to see. So so let's look at okay. So here we go. This really kind of sums it up. Okay. So the rabbis, so this is the rabbinical configuration based on the fixed calendar. Which is what the rabbis say. Okay. So let's talk about this for a second and then I'll extend it. Okay. So when does Shavuot fall? Okay. So according to this, one second here. Right. So the days of the week are irrelevant. These are just for the, oops. It's just happened to be the days of the week on 2011. So the days of the week are irrelevant. This could all be shifted over one day left or one day right or 2 days. Okay. It doesn't matter. Okay. The point is that Chag Shavuot, according to the rabbis, okay, falls out on the 6th day of the third month. Okay, falls out on the 6th day of the third month. So we know that, let's just go back over this. Okay, we know the Passover offering, we're starting here. The Passover offering, I just want to make sure you guys can see the screen. Yes. So the Passover offering is on the 14th of the first month. The Shabbat of Leviticus 23:11. That's the Shabbat, that the day after you bring the Omer offering, according to the rabbis. That Shabbat means the first day of Chag HaMatzot. The Omer offering, therefore, is always brought on the 16th day of Nisan, of what the rabbis call Nisan, the 16th day of the first month. Okay, these dates, by the way, are the Hebrew dates. Okay, again, the days of the week are completely irrelevant here. It's just the days of the week that happen to fall out in 2011. Okay, so then we have Chag HaMatzot. The rest of Chag HaMatzot is in orange. Okay, so our 7 days of Chag HaMatzot are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That brings us up to the night of the 21st, or sunset of the 21st. The end of the 21st, I should say. Okay, and then we have our, this is our first Shabbat. Okay, so this is everything according to the rabbis. So the Omer offering, L'macharat Shabbat, okay, you're supposed to count 7 Shabbats. So what is the Shabbat? The Shabbat is 7 weeks. Okay. So this is the first week, or the end of the first week. Okay. Well, we should say the first week. This is Shabbat. This is the next one. Okay. So these are the 7 Shabbats that you're supposed to count. Okay. 1. So this is the end of the first week, end of the second week, end of the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. So this is the 7th Shabbat, again, according to the rabbis, because the rabbis believe that Shabbat, in that context, in Leviticus 23:11, means the first day of Passover. The Karaites do not believe that. We believe it means in general. There's no we, because everyone is supposed to have their own educated opinion. But in general, Karaites believe that it means an actual Shabbat. But we're talking about the rabbinical understanding now. So the first Shabbat is the first day of Chag HaMatzot, or the Shabbat that's being spoken about is Chag HaMatzot. You have to count 7 Shabbats. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 7th Shabbat brings us to the 5th day of the 3rd month, which would be Sivan. Okay, Nisan is the first month. Again, this is the Babylonian names that the rabbis have since adopted. And so Sivan, then Iyar would be the 2nd month, and then Sivan would be the 3rd month. So this brings us up to the 5th day of the 3rd month. That's that 7th Shabbat of the Omer count, right? You're supposed to count 7 Shabbats, and then the following day is Chag HaShavuot, and that would be the 6th day of the 3rd month. Okay, so according to the rabbinical fixed calendar, Shavuot is always going to fall out on the 6th day of Sivan the 6th, or the 6th day of the 3rd month, right? Let's verify that and go to Rabbi Wikipedia. And it should mention that. Significance, ancient, modern, blah, 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 blah. Wait a second. Here, the 6th day of the Hebrew month of Sivan. Okay, so is a Jewish holiday that occurs on the 6th day of the Hebrew month of Sivan. This is according to the rabbis, not according to the Karaites. Okay, it's variable according to the Karaites. And it also assumes the rabbinical use of the fixed calendar of Hillel II, which was only adopted in the 4th century CE. So we're going to give the rabbis another benefit of the doubt. Okay, but we'll get to that afterwards. So far, we've given them 3 benefits of the doubt. What are our 3 benefits of the doubt? We're assuming that in Exodus chapter 19, verse 1, where it says, B'chodesh HaShlishi, that means the first day, that means the new moon, the first day of the 3rd month. That's benefit of the doubt number 1. No, we've given them 4 benefits of the doubt. Benefit of the doubt number 2 is that, well, it says they arrived in the desert of Sinai on that day, which will give them the benefit of the doubt and say it's the first day of the 3rd month, that they got to the mountain on that same day. That's benefit of the doubt number 2. Benefit of the doubt number 3 is, there we go, I'm counting with my hands, but you can't see. Benefit of the doubt number 3 is that the story of Yitro didn't happen until after the giving of the 10 commandments, because that's going to take time and push things way too far. And benefit of the doubt number 4 is that Moshe going up for the first time to the mountain, where he doesn't get the 10 commandments, but he gets, basically this beautiful statement of, Moshe and God coming, of Israel and God coming together, Israel being a special nation to God, okay, that's another intervening event. So we have 4 benefits of the doubt. One benefit of the doubt that B'chodesh Shlishi means the first of the 3rd month. The second, that they got to the mountain on the same day they entered the desert of Sinai. Third, that Yitro occurred after the giving of the 10 commandments, because if it occurred before, there probably wouldn't be time give the 10 commandments before Shavuot, and according to the rabbis. And number 4, that Moshe's first trip up to the mountain also either happened very quickly or happened after. Well, it clearly didn't happen after that. It happened very quickly. Okay, so there we go. 4 benefits of the doubt so far for the rabbis, because we've got to squeeze it in. If this is the day, if the first day of the 3rd month, according to our first benefit of the doubt that we're giving the rabbis, the first gift we're giving the rabbis, if this phrase B'chodesh Shlishi means the first day of the 6th month, the 3rd month, then we've only got 5 more days until we get to the 6th day of the 3rd month, when Shavuot happens. Because the rabbis want to say that on this very day, on the 6th day of the 3rd month, this is when the 10 commandments were given. Okay, so we've already given them all the benefits of the doubt. It's like a bunch of get out of jail free cards. We've already given all of those benefits of the doubt, and still we're going to see there's a problem. Okay, I'll complicate one thing afterwards, which, as I mentioned, this is the rabbinical configuration based on the fixed calendar. Well, the rabbis did not use the fixed calendar until, as we mentioned, I think the exact year was something like 359 CE. At any rate, in the 4th century, when Hillel II adopted the Babylonian calendar, which he repurposed as the so-called Jewish calendar. But before that, they used an unfixed calendar, which means that, theoretically speaking, okay, each month could have, each of these 2 months could, in rare occasions, have either 29 days or 30 days. So both months have 29 days, okay? Then this would push everything back 1 day, right? Wait, let me think. If both, any rate, okay, it gets confusing. If this is 29 days and everything gets pushed back a day here, okay? Which means that the 6th of the month would actually be 1 day earlier. I'm sorry, which means that Shavuot would actually fall on the 7th of the month rather than the 6th of the month, okay? If both months are 30 days, then Shavuot would actually fall on the 5th of the month rather than the 6th of the month. So basically, there's a flexibility of 1 day in each case, okay? According to the fixed calendar of Hillel II, Shavuot must fall on the 6th of the 3rd month, but before the rabbis used the fixed calendar, this is now our 5th benefit of the doubt we're giving them. It's not a benefit of the doubt, this is a fact. No, it is kind of a benefit of the doubt, because it shows that before they adopted the fixed calendar, that Shavuot itself was variable. Okay, so we're going to give them another benefit of the doubt and give them a 3-day range in which this Shavuot can occur. So it can occur either, according to the rabbis, before the fixed calendar. With the fixed calendar, it must occur on the 6th. Before the fixed calendar, it occur either on the 5th, the 6th, or the 7th, because you can have 4 possibilities. The first month is, or let's say 3 possibilities. Both months are 30 days, possibility 1. Both months are 29 days, possibility 2. Or 1 month is 30 and the other is 29. It could be either 30-29 or 29-30. That's possibility number 3, and that's what's represented here. Specifically, that the first month is 30 days and the second month is 29 days, according to the calendar of Hillel II, which is basically, as I point out, the Babylonian calendar. To make a long story short, that before the fixed calendar that was adopted by the rabbis in the 4th century CE, you have a flexibility of the 5th day, 6th day, or 7th day for being Shavuot. After the fixed calendar was adopted, it must be the 6th of the 3rd month. Okay, so let's keep all of that in mind. That's our 5th benefit of the doubt. We're really going out on a limb for these rabbis. Okay, getting rid of this person. I don't understand what the heck is with these ridiculous things. Okay, so alrighty, so let's keep on taking a look. Okay, I should list benefits of the doubt in my spreadsheet, but I won't right now. Maybe I will afterwards. Maybe I will. Okay, yeah, maybe I should. Nah, I'm not gonna do it. Let's take up too much time. All right, so okay, so Moshe comes down. Yavo Moshe. So now we're in Exodus 19:7. Yavo Moshe yikra leziknei ha'am. I can't believe it's already so late. Oh my God, I'll have to wrap this up within about a half an hour. Yavo Moshe yikra leziknei ha'am yasem lifneim et kol ha'dvarim ha'ela asher tzivahu Yehovah. So now Moshe calls the elders and tells them all of this stuff that God said. Ya'anu kol ha'am yahtau yomru kol asher diber Yehovah na'aseh. So now Moshe comes down, tells the elders, tells the entire nation. Or maybe the elders tell the nation, or maybe they tell the nation as a whole. The nation answers, we will do. Everything that Yehovah has spoken, we will do. In other words, we will listen to him and we will keep his covenant. And then Moshe goes back up to the nation, to God. Moshe el divrei ha'am el Yehovah. Well, it doesn't say he went back up, but he tells God the response of the nation. Verse 9, Wayomer Yehovah el Moshe hine anochi ba elecha ba'av ha'anan ba'avur ishma ha'am b'divrei imach b'dabri imach v'gam ba ya'aminu olam uyaged Moshe et divrei ha'am el Yehovah. Okay, so then God comes to Moshe and says, I'm going to come to you. So this is now talking about the giving of the Ten Commandments. I'm going to come to you in a Av Hanan, in the thickness. Av is like thickness. In the thick cloud. Okay, so I'm going to come to you. I'm going to speak to you in a thick cloud in order that the people will listen to me when I speak with you. And that they will believe in you forever. Okay? That's a repeat of what it says here. The last verse, but this is now giving more detail. Okay? So there we have it. Okay? So God says the reason he's going to come in this big, thick cloud and the whole show is, and speak to Moshe, right? The whole nation is going to see God speaking to Moshe through this, the show of fire and clouds and all of this, this big stuff, which is going to scare we won't say the bejesus out of them. That would not be right. Put the fear of God in them, literally, is so that they'll believe in Moshe. So they're going to take Moshe seriously because they're going to see God speaking to Moshe with this whole big show that's going to scare the heck out of them. Okay? Verse 10, Yomer Yehovah el Moshe, lech el ha'am, v'kidashtem hayom ochar, וקיבצו שמלותם. היו נכונים ליום השלישי, כי ביום השלישי ירד יהוה לעיני כל העם על הר סיני. So here we go. So Yehovah says to Moses, go to the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow. So let's say today is Monday. So Monday, Tuesday, sanctify them. And then on Wednesday, okay, and they should be ready for the third day. Because on this third day, this is when Yehovah is going to come down before all of the eyes of all of the people. Okay? And that's all we need to know for the timing. So it's going to be the third day. So what do the rabbis say? So the rabbis say that they arrived at Mount Sinai on the first day of the third month, which again is an assumption, not necessarily the case. And that a bunch of stuff happened. Basically, this happened. So that took a couple of days. And then, so these two events happened. Moshe went up to the mountain, came down, and then Moshe returned word to God, etc., etc. And then we have 3 days until the Ten Commandments are given. So in terms of time, that's what the rabbis go by. Okay? So the rabbis basically say that there were a couple of events, of these intervening events. We'd mentioned a bunch of them, which seemed to take a lot more than 3 days. But basically, we need a bunch of intervening events. So if Shavuot occurs on the 6th, remember, it could occur on the 5th or the 6th or the 7th, but let's say it occurs on the 6th. That means that this first day, right, because it says in verse 10, so this first day would be the 4th of the month, the 4th of the third month. This mahar, this hayom is the 4th of the third month, the 4th of, I'll just use the Babylonian names just to avoid tongue twisters. So this would be, this hayom would be the 4th of Sivan. This mahar would be the 5th of Sivan. And then showtime is the 6th of Sivan. Okay? So this hayom is the 4th. They arrived, according to the rabbis, at the mountain on the 1st of the third month. So they had the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, and then to have all these, to have whatever intervening events occurred, and then on the 4th, that's when Moshe, one second, that's when Yehovah tells Moshe, get ready in 3 days from now. Okay? So basically, that's the way the rabbis derive it. So when I learned with my particular rabbi, who I still have a certain amount of respect for the guy, but he's stuck in rabbi land too much and cannot see his way out of it. So he pointed this out when I came to him with this question. He said, "Well, look, it says it took 3 days for a whole bunch, for them to get to the camp and unpack their crap and put up their tents and all this stuff. And then Moshe has to go up to the mountain, has to come down, has to get word from the people. He has to tell the word to God. Then he has to go back and deal with the zkenim, etc., etc. It took all this stuff up until the 4th of the first month, from the 1st of the 4th month when they arrived to the 4th of the first month when God says to Moshe, get ready in 3 days on the 6th day. Okay. Once again, before the adoption of the fixed calendar by the rabbis, this could actually be the 5th or the 7th, but we're just going to stick with the 6th for now, because the point is there's no exact date that's given. It just falls near, it would seem. If we take out a whole bunch of intervening events, again, if we make all our assumptions that this does mean the first day of the third month, if we say that Yitro did not happen until afterwards, okay? If we say that they arrived at Mount Sinai the same day they entered the desert of Sinai, okay? If we say that this intervening event of Moshe going up to the mountain and back down happened, well, that clearly did, okay? And before the giving of the 10 Commandments, then this is all supposed to somehow lead us up to the 6th day. But the point that should be made is that the Torah nowhere, in no way, shape, or form, says explicitly that the Torah was given. In fact, it doesn't say exactly what day it was given at all, right? Because then we have it here that it's given. These are the actual 10 Commandments. And we don't have another day mentioned at all. And then we go into a whole bunch of different laws, right? So that's it. We don't have any other timing mentioned. Okay, the only timing we have, just to review, the times that we know about, okay, are they arrive in the desert of Sinai, maybe on the first day of the third month, if that even means that. And we know that there's a 3-day period, 3 days inclusive, meaning today, tomorrow, and the next day is when showtime is. So 3 days, okay, today, a total of 2 days really, from today till 2 days later, today, quote unquote, till 2 days later, when they have to sanctify themselves and get ready, okay? So that you'd have to add on once again another 3 days, and then you can get to the 6th of the third month, but there's no timing there whatsoever. So the rabbis are making an assumption that Shavuot, or that all the intervening stuff before that 3-day period of sanctification is mentioned here. Hayom Machar Yom Shlishi is mentioned, that all of the other intervening stuff took 3 days. Excuse me for 1 second. Well, let me set it. I'll set this up. It will make a huge difference. Because it's, no, it's on the floor level. It's not. You want to put it up higher. A, it'll shine, it'll put the heat right on you. Okay, and B, is warm things up. Don't knock it over, the whole house will explode. What? No. Okay. Sorry about that. Logistics. Okay, so that's it. That's how they get their timing. And we see how many assumptions have to be made, how many benefits of the doubt have to be given, and how it doesn't even say an exact day. They're just saying, oh, it kind of comes near, and so therefore it must be the same day. So what's the real reason that the rabbis, I don't get this stuff. What's the real reason that the rabbis second? Okay, whatever. What's the real reason that the rabbis make Shavuot? They change the meaning of Shavuot from being it's a first fruits holiday to celebrate the first fruits of the wheat harvest. Okay. So what's the reason they change it from that to some holiday about the giving of the Torah? It's because they destroyed, or they were instrumental in destroying the temple, despite their protestations against the destruction of the temple. After they, successfully took power away from the Kohanim and the Levites and the Hashmonaim and brought power in for themselves, and the only way they could do that would be to destroy the temple. Because once the temple is destroyed, then the Levites and the Kohanim and the Hashmonaim, who were Kohanim, had, or at least the Kohanic dynasty, right? Since Mattatyahu was a Kohen, right, from Modi'in. So the rabbis basically had to destroy the temple in order to take power for themselves. Once they destroy the temple, then Shavuot has no more meaning, because you cannot bring a sacrifice to a temple that doesn't exist. So they had to give Shavuot a new meaning. The meaning they gave it, they said, oh, look, we work things out. We can kind of squeeze it in so that Shavuot occurs at the same time as the giving of the Torah. We just saw there's no explicit evidence for that whatsoever. And so the new meaning of this holiday is just as the new meaning of Yom Teruah is Rosh Hashanah. The new meaning of this holiday, Chag Shavuot, which used to be a day in which you brought the first offerings of the wheat harvest to the temple, now is going to be celebrated for the giving of the Torah, right? And we can sit and you can listen to us and preach our baloney in yeshivas on this day until 3:00 in the morning, until you pass out in your tea and disgusting brownies. And then you have to get up an hour later to go to the kotel. Well, that's what we used to do in yeshiva. At any rate, that's the story with the Shavuot. And it all has to do with the rabbis forcing the destruction of the temple. Despite their lofty protestations against the destruction of the temple, they were instrumental in destroying the temple. They wanted to destroy the temple because that's the only way they could take over the nation, by basically kicking out, as I said, the Kohanim, the Levites, and the Hashmonaim, all of who had close, and the Sadducees, right? All of who had close connection to the temple. Well, destroy the temple, and there's no place they can go, right? If you destroy build it and they shall come. Well, if you destroy it, then they shall go away. Okay, so that was the rabbi's motto. Build it and they shall come, destroy it and they shall go away. Okay, so now there's no place to bring there's nothing to bring the first fruits of the wheat offering to. So we'll give a completely new meaning to the holiday. We can kind of shove this into more or less to this giving of the Torah, more or less to the time that Shavuot would fall out. Again, lots of assumptions there and lots of variability there. as well, right? Because, okay, well, I'll get to that in one second. So, okay, I'll say one more thing in a second. But that's the basic bottom line, and that's so the rabbis had to come up with a new meaning, a false meaning for this holiday, and the meaning they came up with is Chag Matan Torah, the holiday of the giving of the Torah, which has no basis whatsoever in the Torah. It's a destruction. This Chag Matan Torah is ironically a destruction of the Torah because it goes against exactly what it says for Chag HaShavuot. Let's look at Chag HaShavuot. Okay, that's going to be in Leviticus 23. See what we're supposed to be doing on Chag HaShavuot. We'll start here. Leviticus 23:15. Shall count for you from the day after the Shabbat. We won't even go into what that means. We've already spoken about that many times. From the day of you're bringing the wave sheaf offering. Sheva Shabbatot Tmimot Tiena. 7 complete Shabbats there shall be. Ad mimacharat Shabbat Shvi'i, until the day after the 7th Shabbat. Tisparu Hamishim Yom, where you will have counted 50 days, or you will count 50 days. Kravta minha chadasha liYehovah, and you shall bring a new offering to Yehovah. So what's the old offering? The old offering is the Omer offering, or the previous offering is the Omer offering. Omer Reshit Kitzirchem El HaKohen. This is a barley offering because that's what's ripe at the time of the year. Okay. Kravta minha chadasha liYehovah. You shall bring a new wheat offering. Mincha always implies a grain offering, as they translate it here. Okay, a new grain offering to Yehovah. Mimoshav mi moshvotechem. Oh, do I have it on? Ooh, I have my. Let's bring this back. I'm sorry, couldn't even see. Okay, we're in Leviticus 23:17. Mimoshvotechem taviu lechem tnufa. From your habitations you shall bring, and this would imply that each person should bring. Okay, this is not an offering. We also know that Shavuot is one of the Shloshet HaRegalim, one of the pilgrimage holidays. So everyone comes up from all over the nation and brings Taviu Lechem Tnufa. You shall bring a bread for waving. It's another wave offering. So here we have the Omer Tnufa. Okay, here we're waving a sheaf. Here we're waving bread. Okay. Lechem tnufa shtayim. So 2 loaves of bread. Shnei esronim solet, made out of 2 isronim, 2/10 of an ephah. Okay. Of solet. Solet is fine flour. Okay, high quality flour. Tiena hametz. So it shall be leavened bread this time, okay? And which is strange because they're not supposed to put leavened bread on the altar, but this is not on the altar, okay? It shall it shall be baked leavened bread as a first fruits offering to Yehovah. Okay, we craft them al halechem shivat kvasim, and with this bread you shall sacrifice 7 lambs. Okay, atmimim. So this is now not each person sacrifice 7 lambs. That would be impossible. It would be too many lambs, and it would be too expensive. But this is now one sacrifice that's being done by the Kohanim together with the first fruit offerings that each person is bringing, 2 loaves of fine flour baked into leavened bread. Okay. Now it's interesting, right, that we know that the Omer offering is associated with unleavened bread, right? Assuming it occurs during Passover, which it very possibly does, although it's not explicit. But at any rate, you don't bring a loaf of leavened bread there. There you bring an Omer. You just bring the raw barley. Here you're bringing baked leavened bread. So it's the opposite in a sense, or it's a contrast to Haga Matzot, which is associated with unleavened bread. Here explicitly it's en hametz te'afena. It should be leavened bread. So on Shavuot, you bring leavened bread, bikurim as a first fruits to Yehovah. And then 7 lambs are sacrificed with that. Bnei Shana, Par ben Bakar, and 1 yearling bull. Elim Shnaim, then a whole bunch of animals. We're going to skip ahead of that. Okay. V'asitam Seir Izim Echad Lechatat U'Shnei Kvasim. So more animal sacrifices. Oinif Akohen Otam Al Halechem Habikurim Tnufa Ifnei Yehoah. So then the Kohen is going to wave. So this is not a wave sheaf offering. This is a wave loaf offering. Okay, and he's going to wave the bread with these animal sacrifices. So again, I guess there's one loaf of bread that he takes and waves with the animal sacrifices, or you could say maybe this is one loaf of bread for the entire people, but I don't think so. I think the idea is each person brings their first fruits, but not necessarily. Okay, we won't even get into that now. לפני יהוה על שני כבשים קודש יהיו ליהוה לכהן. Okay, וקראתם בעצם היום הזה מקרא קודש, and on this very day, and here we have בעצם היום הזה, on this very day. Okay, this is the same phrase we saw in Exodus 19, where the rabbis are saying that this proves it's the first day, that hayom hazeh is referring to b'chodesh shlishi, proving that it's the first day of the third month. But we see that there's a common phrase just pointing out the importance of that very day. So that first assumption is not necessarily true, that in Exodus chapter 19 verse 1, that b'chodesh shlishi, when it says b'hayom hazeh, does not necessarily mean that it means on the first day of the third month. But at any rate, we have the same phrase here. Okay. Mikra Kodesh, a holy convocation. So it shall be a holy convocation. You don't do any work on that day. And this is eternal. This is an eternal law. In all your habitations for all your generations. So now we have this phrase, okay, which is the same phrase that's used for Shabbat, for instance. But it's clear when it can't be for all of your habitations for all generations, because if you get thrown out of the land, you can't do this, right? So this would imply that when they're in the land, that this phrase means in your land from your own habitations. Okay, so could you make a case that you don't have to keep the Shabbat outside of the land of Israel? I'm not going to go in that direction, but I suppose if you really wanted to go in that direction, you could possibly make that case, because this phrase clearly here could only make sense, at least in the context of Shavuot, when the Israelites are settled in the land, because when the temple is destroyed and when they're living in Poland, they're not going to be able to bring a first fruit sacrifice of wheat to the temple, right? Even though it says throughout all your habitations throughout all your generations. Okay, and then it goes on to Pe'ah and Lechet. Okay, and Leket. So that's that. So that's what Shavuot was supposed to be, and it has nothing to do with the giving of the Torah. I've already said twice, and I'll say it one last time. The rabbis were intent on destroying the temple to take over, to usurp power over the nation. These disgusting this disgusting sect, the first Reform Judaism in history. Well, no, there were others before. There were idol worshippers. But one of the major Reform Jewish movements of all times, this disgusting Pharisaic Rabbinical movement, which changed the Torah, which destroyed the temple, and brought in a new form of Judaism, which neither our fathers or our fathers' fathers ever knew, and has lasted and cursed the nation to this very day. And one of the lingering signs, may it disappear speedily in our days, of this fact is that they changed the holiday of Shavuot from a holiday based on the first fruits of the wheat offering to a holiday based incorrectly and falsely on some idea of the giving of the Torah. Okay, with that, I think I'm going to have to end. It's getting kind of late here. There's so much more to say. Obviously, we didn't even get to the 10 Commandments, right? I really would love to. I think what I'm going to do is read through until the end of the Parsha with little or no commentary. Of course, every time I say that, it's more commentary. But we'll go for another 10 or 15 minutes. I'll read through to the end of the Parsha, and then we'll call it a day, okay? Does anyone have any questions about all of this stuff? Specifically about the date of Shavuot, the meaning of Shavuot, the rabbi's attempt to, jam it into the 6th day of the month. Oh, so another point to be said is that Shavuot, So another proof that it's complete baloney, even according to the rabbis, is, as I mentioned, before the rabbis adopted the fixed calendar of Hillel II in the 4th century CE, they had a variable calendar. And we said that Shavuot doesn't even fall out every year on the 6th day of the 3rd month. It's variable. So how could Shavuot be on the exact same day of the giving of the Torah, right? If the Torah was given, let's say, on the 6th day of the 3rd month, then does that make any sense? Even according to the rabbis, before they adopted the fixed calendar, Shavuot could either be on the 5th, the 6th, or the 7th. So it couldn't possibly be on the exact same anniversary of the giving of the Torah. I think I'm going to write my old rabbi a letter and ask him that question. Of course, he'll ignore it. So it really angers me, and this is why I became a Karaite, when I see how much the rabbis and that disgusting arrogance, and it's just it's like Christianity, or it's a cult that's just spread and like a disease and taken over the nation of Israel, and it just sickens me to see how they play with and distort the Torah. And that's why I became a Karaite, and that's why I'm proud to be a Karaite and stick to the true Torah as best I can, with all my flaws and all my sins and all my mistakes and all my lack of knowledge and and mistakes and all of that stuff. I still try my best to stick to the Torah as best I can. Okay, so that being said, any questions, any comments before we just move on and read the rest of the parsha? If so, type them in. And if not, let's just go on and try to finish this off, because I'm not gonna stop now when we haven't even gotten to the 10 Commandments. That would be that would be like driving up to the top of a mountain and turning around, like when you just get right near the summit. Okay, this is the pinnacle, right, of everything in a certain sense, right? So okay, so here we are. Okay, Vayu Nichonim liyom shlishi. So we're in Exodus 19:11. Ki bayom shlishi yarad Yehovah le'einei kol ha'am al har Sinai. So on this 3rd day, right, 2 days from today, quote unquote, today in air quotes, God is going to come down. Higbalta et ha'am saviv lemor hishamru lechem alot bahar. U'nogea bekatsehu. Kol hanogea bahar mot yumat. So nobody's going to go up in this. This is God's territory now. You're not gonna come into the, if you can't go into the White House without getting shot, then you're certainly not going up on the mountain, without getting stoned or shot to death, as it says here. Or yaro yereh. There were no guns back then. But I guess it means with an arrow. Lo tiga bo yad ki kol yisakel o yaro yereh im behama im ish lo yachye bimshoch hayovel hema ya'alu bahar. So the Yovel, the Jubilee, is I'm not sure what that word means. So there's like a shofar. Okay, they translate as trumpet. Yeah, a ram's horn. Okay. Ram's horn, only combination. Ram's horn as a wind instrument designation. Okay. So so when the shofars blow, Ema Ya'alu Bahar. Okay, I'm sorry, they should not. Once the shofars blow, go up onto the mountain. That's 14. Let's get an English translation for that for a second. After Moshe had gone down, they said, prepare yourselves. No. Okay, no person. Only when the ram's horn sounds and love blast may they approach the mountain. Okay, got it. Yered Moshe, where were we? Lo tiga blah. Okay. Lo tiga bo yad ki kol yisakel o yaro ra'i yare im behema im ish lo yachye bimshoch hayovel hem ya'lu bahar. Okay. וירד משה מן ההר אל העם ויקדש את העם ויכבסו סמלותם ויאמר אל העם היו נכונים ל3 ימים al shu el isha. So don't have relations with a woman. Why? Because when you have relations with a woman, we know from later on from Leviticus, you enter into a state of ritual impurity. Ritual impurity only has to do with the holiest of places, such as the temple, the tabernacle. Okay. Other than that, you can be in a state of ritual impurity. But when you get close to God, you cannot be. There should be no kind of dirtiness on you at all, right? And sex may be a beautiful thing, but it can also kind of be a dirty, sticky mess, and none of that near God, right? We spoke earlier about in Exodus 17. 17, 18, I guess. No, 16. I can't remember what it is now. But about the altar has to have has to not have steps, not revealed when you walk, if you were to walk up the steps, right? And we said that a lot of pagan cultures, there was a close combination between their cultic practice and sex, right? Even in the Torah, a prostitute is called a kidesha, which implies that she's sanctified to a pagan temple. Okay, mentioned this morning. I'm not going to go back into it. So, at any rate, stay away from women because you need to remain ritually pure when you meet God. Doesn't mean that sex is a bad thing. That's a Christian pagan, ascetic interpretation, but it means there's a time and a place, right? You wouldn't have sex in a Dunkin' Donuts, or I don't know, maybe some of you would, but I wouldn't. So you don't have sex on anywhere near God, right? It's not the time or the place. Okay, or when God is making His presence known. Okay, at any rate, so where were we? Right, verse 16. Vayhi b'yom hashlishi biyot aboker vayhi kolot barakim ve'anan kaved al har. So we've got thunder, od, and the sound of the ram's horn, very loud, animal horn. V'yachrad kol ha'am asher b'machaneh. Verse 17. Vayotze Moshe et ha'am לקראת Elohim. מן המחנה ויצבו בתחתית ההר. Verse 18. בהר סיני עשן כולו. So here we have thunder, lightning, clouds, heavy, thick clouds, right? Remember, God is going to come down in a cloud and speak to Moshe. So they'll believe in him. Where was that? Oh, we don't need to find it, right? And here it is. Here's the cloud and the thunder and the lightning. Everybody feared. Har Sinai and Ashan, so the Kulo, so the whole thing was basically smoking. The mountain was smoking. Minei Asher Yarad Alau Yehovah Ba'esh, and God came down in fire. Okay, so he came down in a cloud. So let's just see here. None, I can't find it right now. They said he's going to come down in a thick cloud, but now he's coming down, so there are clouds and all this kind of stuff. But he comes down in fire. Ya'al ashano ke'eshan hakivshan, and up when it's smoke, like the smoke from a furnace. V'yachrad kol ha'har me'od, and the entire mountain was shaking. So it was a big show. V'yi kol hashofar holech v'chazek me'od Moshe yidaber v'Elohim ya'anu b'kol. So Moshe is speaking to God. Moshe is speaking, and God is answering with a voice, right? So the entire nation is seeing God speak to Moshe. So it's not that God is speaking directly to the nation. God is speaking, well, maybe he is speaking to the nation, but it's remember, one of the reasons that God said he was going to put on the show is that the people would believe in Moshe as a prophet forever, okay? And why does he want them to believe in Moshe? Because Moshe is going to be laying down the law, right? So if they believe in Moshe, then they're going to believe in what in the law that he's getting from God and giving to Israel. Okay. Yared Yehovah al Har Sinai el Rosh Hahar, ויקרא יהוה למשה אל ראש ההר ויעל משה. ויאמר יהוה אל משה רד העד בעם פן יהרסו אל יהוה לראות ונפל ממנו רב. וגם הכהנים הניגשים אל יהוה יתחדשו פן יפרוץ בהם יהוה. So we have Kohanim, but there were no Kohanim yet, right? We don't have the installment of the Levites and the Kohanim until later. So go figure. There's a lot to say about this, but we don't have the time right now. Yomer Moshe, I'll just say very quickly that probably there were Kohanim, but they weren't yet of the Levites. The Levites were not yet appointed as the Kohanim. Okay. Yomer Moshe el Yehovah lo yuchal am la'alot el har Sinai ki ata edota banu lemor hagbel et hahar v'kidashto. Verse 24. Yomer elav Yehovah lech red alita ata Aaron imach. והכהנים והעם אל ירסו לעלות אל יהוה פן יפרץ בם. So now Moshe was speaking to God. Now he's going to come down and he's going to come back up with Aaron and the Kohanim. Or he just comes back with, he would come back with Aaron and the Kohanim, and the rest of the people would stay down there. Okay, they can't go up onto the mountain. Yered Moshe el Am Yomer Alehem. So now Moshe comes down to the people and he says to them, and he told them, okay? He tells them this. And then we daber Elohim et kol hadvarim ha'ele lemor. So I guess we can assume that now Moshe is back up on the mountain with Aaron. God is speaking to Moshe, or Moshe is speaking to God, and then God is answering and everybody's hearing. Okay? Anochi Yehovah eleh, and here are the 10 commandments. Okay? And then we'll end it. Oh, that's where it was at the end of here. This is where the altar, not to put steps on the altar. Okay? Well, let's read through the 10 commandments and then we'll end. וידבר אלוהים את כל הדברים האלה לאמור, אנוכי יהוה אלוהיך אשר הוצאתיך מארץ מצרים מבית עבדים. לא יהיה לך. So the first thing God says is he introduces himself. Hey guys, this is check out who I am, right? No, it's important because God is saying first who he is and what he did, right? Before he's telling them what to do, right? He's introducing himself formally. This is the first time that God is speaking to the entire nation, and he's saying who he is, right? He's making it clear who's speaking here, okay? Anochi Yehovah Elohecha asher hotziticha me'eretz Mitzrayim mibeit avadim. Lo yeh lecha Elohim acharim al panai. And then the next commandment number 2, well, if you consider this commandment number 1, it's not a commandment, statement, therefore it's called Aseret HaDibrot. This statement's not the 10 commandments. The next one follows in a logical sense, right? Don't have other gods. I am Yehovah. I took you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. This is what I did for you, and so you stick with me. Don't have any other gods. Okay? And then he gives the specifics. So really the first 3 commandments are really go in a logical flow, or they're kind of related to each other, right? In a very logical flow. לא תעשה לך פסל בכל תמונה אשר בשמיים ממעל ואשר בארץ מתחת ואשר במים מתחת לארץ. So don't make yourself any graven image or any tmuna, any likeness of anything that's in the sky, above, on the land, or under the sea, or in the sea, under the land. Okay, as someone who is now doing my master's degree in marine biology, this one particularly speaks to me. Okay, at any rate, lo tishtachawe lahem v'lo ta'avdem ki anochi Yehovah Elohecha el kana. פוקד ארון אבות על בנים, על שלישים, על רבעים לשונאי, ועושה חסד לערפים לאוהבי ולשומרי מצוותיי. Verse 7, לא תישא את שם יהוה אלוהיך לשווא. And this is not speaking about taking the name in vain. The main meaning here is don't swear falsely in God's name. כי לא ינקה יהוה את אשר יישא את שמו לשווא. Verse 8, זכור את יום השבת לקדשו, 6 ימים תעבוד ועשית כל מלאכתך. ביום השביעי שבת ליהוה אלוהיך לא תעשה כל מלאכה אתה ובנך ביתך עבדך ואמתך ואמתך וגרך אשר בשעריך כי 6 ימים עשה יהוה את השמיים ואת הארץ את הים ואת כל אשר בם וינח ביום השביעי על כן ברך יהוה את יום השבת ויקדשהו. If you're a rabbinical Jew, you know that phrase very well. It's in the Friday nighttime Kiddush. כבד את אביך ואת אמך למען יאריכון ימיך על האדמה אשר יהוה אלוהיך נותן לך. לא תרצח, לא תנאף, לא תגנוב, לא תענה ברעך עד שקר, לא תחמוד בית רעך, לא תחמוד אשת רעך ועבדו ועמתו ושורו וחמורו וכל אשר לרעך. And I think that's the end of the parsha. See? No, 23. וכל העם רואים את הקולות ואת הלפידים ואת קול השופר ואת ההר עשן וירא העם וינועו ויעמדו מרחוק ויאמרו אל משה דבר אתה עמנו ונשמעה ואל ידבר עמנו אלוהים פן נמות. So now they don't want God speaking directly to them anymore. Okay, they're too scared. ויאמר משה אל העם אל תראו כי לבעבור נסות אתכם בה האלוהים ובעבור תהיה יראתו על פניכם. So this is the reason why did he come? In order to test you, in order that your fear should be upon him, upon your faces, upon you. לבלתי תחטאו ויעמוד העם מרחוק כמו שניגש אל הערפל אשר שם האלוהים. ויאמר יהוה אל משה כה תאמר אל בני ישראל אתם ראיתם כי מן השמיים דיברתי עמכם לא תעשון איתי אלוהי כסף ואלוהי זהב לא תעשו לכם. So he ends up with the most, one could say is the most important commandment. Yes, murder is definitely up there and so are other things, but if there's one obsession that the Tanakh has, it is idol worship. The Tanakh hates idol worship. I think only murder is up there with the idol worship. Nothing else. I think idol worship and murder stand together, and it's not even clear from the Tanakh which is worse, to be quite frank. Okay, both are punishable by death, and both are mentioned many times in the Tanakh, and both are considered, in my opinion, I can't think of anything that ranks up there. I mean, of course, all of the 10 Commandments, but nothing else ranks up there with murder and idol worship. And this sums it up right here. So the last thing that he says to them in this, well, it actually goes on because, as we said this morning, the Petucha, the Peh, it's down here, and he speaks about the Mizbeach, but we'll stop here because this is the end of the Parsha. So he sums up by saying, do not worship gods of silver and gold. In other words, worship only me. And with that, we are going to end our Torah study for this Shabbat. It's been a great Torah study. Hope you all enjoyed it. If you have any questions, then you can always post a comment, or you can join the WhatsApp group, or write me in some other way. And please tell your friends, friends, your mom, your dad, your sons, your daughters about this Torah study. I'd really like to start having more and more people join. I think the more people, the better. We all learn from each other, and everyone is invited to come not just onto the YouTube or to the Facebook stream, but to come directly onto the StreamYard stream, where you can actually interact. You can talk, and you don't have to show your face. You can always turn the video off and just talk. You don't have to give your name. But if you want to interact, then that's the best way to do it. So with that, I will say Shabbat Shalom to everybody. Shavua Tov to everybody, depending on where you are. And hope you all have a great Shabbat, a great week. And Bizrat Yehovah, see you next week. Next week, I have a bar mitzvah, so I won't be able to do the morning study. I'll just be doing the afternoon study. So we'll have one study next week. And so hope to see you then. Okay, Shabbat Shalom and Shavua Tov, everybody. Shalom.